Chapter 12-17. In the large amount of attention-grabbing news between the Canla Empire and New Flyer, the famous Alturas Array Design Chamber of Commerce in the Canla Empire's Nzoli province announced that they were cooperating with New Flyer, helping New Flyer's magic machines design a device that could block magic signals. This news didn't attract that much attention. After all, New Flyer had always cooperated with many companies related to the magic machine industry, so it wasn't a big deal to have one more. Compared to this, what people paid more attention to was of course the New Flyer and the Canla Empire's side sticking to their own version of the Chidanlu Town incident, even arguing with each other and clashing with each other. The Canla Empire's side said that the reason for the Chidanlu Town incident was because of the special magic fluctuations in the magic air conditioner, which was combined with the long-distance magic transmission technology. But New Flyer completely denied this and said that this was just the Canla Empire's side of the story, so they couldn't believe it at all. New Flyer also accused the Canla Empire of taking care of the magic air conditioner and the people related to the Chidanlu Town incident, making it so that people couldn't investigate further. They couldn't obtain the exact results and couldn't give a detailed analysis of the cause of this matter, so they couldn't find out what was going on. In each announcement that New Flyer made, although they didn't directly say that this matter was the Canla Empire's plot, as long as one was involved in this matter and saw the reports from both sides, it was very easy for them to have this feeling. Because the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had done their own experiments, giving them incomparably detailed data analysis and reasoning, clearly telling people what didn't make sense in this matter. The Canla Empire always emphasized that their investigation was correct, but they didn't give any data to support it. Because they didn't give a direct answer to New Flyer's questions, naturally people didn't think that this was very credible. Comparing the two, as time passed, the influence of the Chidanlu Town incident gradually faded. The long-distance magic transmission technology that New Flyer was promoting in the Principality of Constantine was already showing result. Over 70% of the citizens of the Principality of Constantine were already using the long-distance magic transmission technology, so they didn't need to worry about buying magic crystals anymore. In this large-scale promotion, there had never been an incident like the Chidanlu Town incident where the citizens fainted. Like this, people became less and less convinced of the results of the Canla Empire's investigation. Instead, they became very interested in the long-distance magic transmission technology that New Flyer was promoting on a large scale. According to the data that New Flyer released after the large-scale promotion in the Principality of Constantine, if it was a family that had a full set of Xinfei brand household magic machines, they would spend around 3 to 5 gold coins a month on magic crystals. But now that they were using the long-distance magic transmission technology, the cost would drop to around 1 gold coin a month. Although it seemed like they were only saving a few gold coins, for a normal family, the cost of a few gold coins couldn't be ignored. So just based on this, it was enough for many citizens to look forward to the promotion of this technology. Entering August, it had been half a year since the Chidanlu Town incident. New Flyer announced to the public that they had signed a cooperation agreement with 17 countries including the Mala Empire, the Lampari Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Ruhr. They would be promoting the long-distance magic transmission network in these 17 countries. Once this result was announced, it was equal to announcing that the Canla Empire's accusation of New Flyer regarding the Chidanlu Town incident had been shattered. If the Canla Empire's accusation was true, were these 17 countries stupid? Would they let the citizens of their countries fall into this kind of danger? And after New Flyer announced this, the Canla Empire fell into an awkward situation. In the past, once New Flyer announced that they would vigorously promote a certain technology, they would first confirm the cooperation with the two empires, the Lampari Kingdom and the Kingdom of Ruhr, and then promote it in these countries before promoting it to the entire signs. But this time, New Flyer announced cooperation with the Mala Empire, the Lampari Kingdom, and the Kingdom of Ruhr, but only the Kanla Empire was left out. And because of the Chidanlu Town incident, the Kanla Empire had launched a lot of attacks on the long-distance magic transmission technology, and even denounced it as a killing network. Of course, it was impossible for them to turn around and run to cooperate with New Flyer in this regard. So this time, in New Flyer's large-scale promotion of this technology in signs, the Kanla Empire could only watch from the sidelines and couldn't participate. At the same time, in order to fully promote the long-distance magic transmission technology, New Flyer, the Continental Sorcerers Guild, the Continental Magic Industry Technology Fund, and others jointly announced a new magic industry standard. In this standard, in order to cooperate with the long-distance magic transmission technology that was about to be promoted in signs, all magic machines would be modified accordingly. A port for connecting to the long-distance magic transmission and a standard module for running magic power would be added, which was the integration into the long-distance magic transmission network proposed by New Flyer, or Network Integration for short. Regarding this new standard, the various magic machine chambers of commerce in the other countries on the continent responded one after another. As for the Kanla Empire's Chamber of Commerce, they didn't dare to recognize this new standard because of the stance of the Kanla Empire's Parliament and Ministry of Magic Industry in the Chidanlu Town incident. Naturally, they couldn't produce magic machines under the new standard. So in just 2 months, the various magic machine chambers of commerce in the Kanla Empire had a large drop in sales. And because these magic machine chambers of commerce were involved in all aspects of the Kanla Empire's magic machine industry, their product sales had a large drop, which greatly affected the Kanla Empire as a whole. The Kanla Empire that had been vigorously developing the magic machine industry in the past 10 years had a large number of magic machine industry-related companies go bankrupt because of this. There was even a wave of unemployment that appeared for the first time. After the Kanla Empire situation was reported by the major newspapers, everyone thought of the Marlow Magic Kingdom from before. The Marlow Magic Kingdom had offended the New Flyer, causing the New Flyer to withdraw from the Marlow Magic Kingdom. Then the country fell into chaos, and there was also a wave of unemployment. Now the Kanla Empire had a bad relationship with the New Flyer because of the Chidanlu Town incident. Although the New Flyer didn't withdraw from the Kanla Empire like the Marlow Magic Kingdom, with just this one action, there was a wave of unemployment in the Kanla Empire. People naturally thought that the Kanla Empire would be like the Marlow Magic Kingdom, falling into chaos and being plundered by other countries. It had to be known that the Mala Empire and the Kanla Empire had formed an alliance 12 years ago to resist the invasion of the New Flyer and the Kingdom of Ruhr. Then they had been peacefully coexisting for the past 10 years, even cooperating in many ways, but these two empires had never been true allies. It could even be said that they were mortal enemies most of the time. If the Kanla Empire fell into chaos, the Malar Empire wouldn't mind stepping on them. From another point of view, this time, it showed the New Flyer's strong influence on the signs. If it was any other company, being targeted by the Kanla Empire like this, or even being forced to give up the large market in the Kanla Empire, it would be a disaster for them. However, the New Flyer's attitude was firm from beginning to end. Although they did lose a part of the Kanla Empire's household magic machine market because of the rules set by the Kanla Empire's Parliament and the Magic Machine Industry Department, it didn't have any decisive effect on the New Flyer. Rather, because the Kanla Empire was too focused on the New Flyer, it made the other countries and companies lose confidence in the Kanla Empire, causing them to fall into a predicament. This time, the New Flyer didn't send out the New Flyer Guards like 12 years ago. They didn't even send out a single soldier. They only made a few moves and the Kanla Empire suffered a great loss. If the New Flyer really wanted to deal with the Kanla Empire would suffer an even greater tragedy. Of course, the Kanla Empire was one of the two empires after all. Its national strength was far stronger than the Mana Magic Kingdom. In addition, it had been sparing no effort to develop the magic machine industry for more than 10 years. It had already formed a very deep foundation. Although it suffered a great loss because of the Chidanlu town incident, the Kanla Empire had thick skin and flesh. It wouldn't really fall into turmoil or even chaos like the Mana Magic Kingdom. Everyone believed that as long as the Kanla Empire didn't continue to target the New Flyer, then the New Flyer definitely wouldn't completely give up the huge market in the Kanla Empire. In the end, a company as large as the New Flyer wasn't much different from a country. There was no enmity between the two countries, only benefit. As long as the New Flyer and the Kanla Empire both recognized that the other could bring them indispensable benefits, then what problem couldn't be solved? However, accidents always happened in this world. October 17th, it was a very normal day that didn't have anything special at all. The Kanla Empire's garrison in the northeast province charged into the New Flyer's magic crystal mine in the Kanla Empire's northeast province, engaging in a fierce exchange of fire with the New Flyer guards. In the end, the northeast province garrison that had 3 times the number of New Flyer guards was completely wiped out by the intense firepower of the New Flyer guards. Chapter 12:18. Who can tell me this? Just what is going on? The Kandra Emperor's face was calm and his tone was even calmer, looking no different from normal. However, it was this calmness that made the entire hall fall into a very low atmosphere. The loyal ministers of the Kandra Empire standing in the hall often interacted with the Emperor, so of course they knew that for this honorable Emperor to act this normal at this time, it meant that his heart was filled with rage. The ministers all had their heads down, not daring to move at all. Even the sound of their breathing was very low, afraid that they would attract the Emperor's attention. However, just because they didn't say anything, it didn't mean that they could escape. The Kandra Emperor looked over the ministers with their heads down and gave a cold snort. He looked at the Kanla Empire's current Prime Minister, Grand Duke Rostov, who was closest to him. Rostov, tell me, why did those bastards from the northeast province have the guts to open fire on a mine in the Empire's territory? Could it be that they want to rebel? A strange look appeared in Grand Duke Rostov's eyes. The main point of this matter was that the northeast province's army wasn't attacking a normal mine, rather it was the mine under New Flyer's name. Now that the Emperor had purposely ignored this, and even gave the northeast province's army the title of rebels, it could be seen that the Emperor had some scruples in his heart. Of course, the Emperor definitely wouldn't admit it, so it was impossible for him as the Prime Minister to reveal the Emperor's thoughts in front of everyone. Thinking about it, Grand Duke Rostov replied, "Your Majesty, I think that Duke Tim isn't that bold. This should be the result of the judgment of the Northeast Province's subordinates." Their own judgment? The Kandra Emperor suddenly raised his voice. Who gave them the right to make their own judgment? This is clearly a rebellion. Since the Emperor had emphasized twice that the troops of the Northeast Province that attacked the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic crystal mine were rebelling, how could the loyal ministers not understand what the Emperor was thinking? They all quickly responded. "That's right. Your Majesty, these soldiers actually attacked the Empire's mines without orders, they must already be plotting something. Fortunately, they've all died in the crossfire with the new. This saves the Empire the effort to eliminate them." Grand Duke Rostov glanced at the Speaker of the Imperial Parliament, Duke Infante, and sneered in his heart. Since Duke Finnard had a close personal relationship with Duke Tim, the governor of the Northeast Province, he would certainly try his best to help Duke Tim get out of this matter. But the Emperor made it clear that he did not want to make a big fuss out of it, and Grand Duke Rostov was well aware that it was best to minimize the problem and to settle the matter as soon as possible. Although the Empire had been at odds with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce during this time, and the Emperor had expressed his impatience with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce many times, the Empire was far from completely breaking off relations with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. If the relationship between the two sides was seriously damaged or even broken because of this incident, the losses the Empire would suffer would be unbearable. The Emperor was very clear on this, which was why he had defined the soldiers attacking the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic crystal mine as rebellion. President Infonard is right. As the Empire's soldiers, they actually dared to attack without orders. No matter what the reason is, this is equal to rebellion. I hope that His Majesty will give the order as soon as possible and order the Northeast Province to investigate this matter, giving the citizens of the Northeast Province an explanation. The Kandra Emperor looked at Grand Duke Rostov with a trace of praise in his eyes. When Grand Duke Garbut left, he had recommended Grand Duke Rostov to take over the position of Prime Minister. He had been very close to his heart in the past few years, and other than his ability being a bit lacking, he was a very reliable choice for Prime Minister. Since the Emperor, the Prime Minister, and the Speaker had all expressed their opinions and there were no different opinions, this matter had already been decided. Even if the others had other thoughts, they could only keep it in their hearts. Just as everyone was quickly discussing how to deal with this matter, a chamberlain hurriedly walked in. Your Majesty, we've already connected to Duke Tim. His Majesty the Kandra Emperor and Grand Duke Rostov exchanged glances, then nodded to the chamberlain. Bring it here. The servant quickly left. After a while, on the table in front of the Kandra Emperor, there was a faint red light that lit up. The Kandra Emperor pressed the button and a light screen appeared on the right side of the hall. Duke Tim's magic image appeared on the light screen. Your Majesty. Duke Tim's side clearly saw the situation on this side, so he gave a bow to the Kandra Emperor before nodding to the other ministers. Seeing Duke Tim's lifelike image, and seeing that there should be a mind behind him, the Kandra Emperor gave a sigh in his heart. Being able to talk to Duke Tim, who was over 2,000 kilometers away, and even being able to see Duke Tim's image, this was the convenience brought by the new flyer. If it was before, if he wanted to receive a report from Duke Tim, he would have to wait at least a week. Since he had already enjoyed the convenience of the new magic technology brought by the new flyer, even the Kandra Emperor wasn't willing to return to his previous life, not to mention the other citizens of the Empire. Thinking of the newspapers in the Empire that called for the new flyer to be expelled, the Kandra Emperor couldn't help giving a bitter laugh in his heart. It would be good if it was that simple. Expelling the new flyer from the Kandla Empire was easy to say, but it was almost impossible to do. The various industries of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had already entered the lives of all the citizens of the Empire. From the industries of the Empire to the lives of the citizens, they were all related to the Frestek Chamber of Commerce to varying degrees. Even if he as the Emperor was dissatisfied that he had to consider the new flyer, he had to be careful when dealing with the new flyer. How could he casually call for the new flyer to be expelled? Thinking of this, the Kandra Emperor looked at Duke Tim with a helpless gaze, and there was only a small bit of anger that was revealed. Tim, do you have a result? As soon as this matter happened in the Northeast Province, the Northeast Province had reported it layer by layer. In the end, the upper echelons of the Empire learned about it in just 2 days. On the day of this matter, Duke Tim, who was the governor of the Northeast Province, had rushed to the location of this matter, the Baimeng mine in the northwest corner of the Northeast Province. It was already the second day after the incident. The mine behind Duke Tim should be the Baimeng mine. Your Majesty, according to my initial understanding, this matter should be caused by the new Duke Tim. Could it be that it wasn't the soldiers who wanted to rebel and attack the Baimeng mine? Duke Ferdinand quickly cut Duke Tim off. Duke Tim was a bit surprised before quickly reacting. His eyes turned and after being silent for a bit, he gave a slight nod. It is indeed like the Sir Speaker said. According to the report, some soldiers were dissatisfied with their treatment in the army, so they gathered to cause trouble. They also heard that the Baimeng mine was owned by the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce, so they felt that there must be quite a bit of wealth here, so they came here to rob it. As for whether they wanted to rebel or not, I don't dare determine. Of course, His Majesty and the ministers of the Empire could label those soldiers as rebels. However, as the governor of the Northeast Province, if his soldiers intended to rebel, he would not be able to get away with it no matter what. Therefore, Duke Tim had to make an excuse for himself first. The Kandra Emperor knit his brows as he looked at Duke Ferdinand. He was a bit dissatisfied that this Parliament speaker had such a close relationship with the governor of the Northeast Province. But now wasn't the time to care about this. He thought about it before asking Duke Tim, "How are the losses at the Biming mine? How did they react to this matter?" The losses at the mine. Currently there are 16 workers who have died, 37 workers who have been heavily injured, and over 100 workers with light injuries. The losses in terms of goods are. What about the losses of the new flyer guards? The Kandra Emperor cut off Duke Tim's words. Hearing this question, the other ministers of the Kanla Empire were all shocked. They focused on Duke Tim in the magic illusion. The new flyer guards. Duke Tim paused as a strange and bitter look appeared on his face. There were only 2 guards who were lightly injured, there were no other losses. Oh! Hearing this answer, everyone in the hall let out a sigh of relief and their expressions became much more relaxed. No matter how many workers died at the mine, it wasn't a problem for these important people. They were just normal citizens, so they couldn't cause any trouble. But the Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards stationed at the mine was a completely different matter. First, the New Flyer guards were official employees of the New Flyer. They were different from the normal workers who were temporarily hired to work at the mine. They didn't have a strict relationship with the New Flyer. So even if the workers suffered heavy losses, it wasn't related to the New Flyer at all. But if the New Flyer guards suffered heavy losses and some guards were even killed, the New Flyer wouldn't let this matter rest. Second, the New Flyer guards represented the armed forces of the New Flyer, which was different from the normal employees of the New Flyer. Exchanging fire with the New Flyer guards and even killing New Flyer guards was equal to declaring war on the New Flyer, which had a completely different meaning. It had to be known, the people who had declared war on the New Flyer before had all paid a painful price. The one who suffered the most was the Kanla Empire from 12 years ago. However, after relaxing, the Kandra Emperor and the ministers all felt a bit of humiliation in their hearts. Since when did the great Kanla Empire have to worry about the loss of a company? Chapter 12:19. After around half an hour, the ministers that had been summoned left and only Grand Duke Rostov was left to face the Kandra Emperor alone. After a bit of silence in the hall, the Kandra Emperor slowly spoke. Rostov, if the trash from the Northeast Province were to attack the Imperial Guards with 3 times their numbers, what would the casualties be like? Grand Duke Rostov was silent for a bit before shaking his head and replying, "Your Majesty, the situation is different, so it's hard to estimate. However, in the previous exercise, the Imperial Guards easily defeated 2 local legions with the strength of 3 combined brigade. They suffered minimal losses." The Kandra Emperor gave a slight nod. The Imperial Guards had a regiment of 5,000 people, so 3 regiments was a total of 15,000 people. The number of local regiments wasn't fixed. There were some with 40 to 50,000 people, and some with 20,000 people. But the Kandra Emperor was very clear on the situation of the last drill. The 3 regiments of the Imperial Guards had defeated 2 local regiments that were close to full strength, which added up to over 80,000 people. As a result, the number of enemies the Imperial Guards defeated was 5 times more than their own. Using this as a reference, it was even more dazzling than when the New Flyer Guards defeated 3 times the number of troops from the Northeast Province. But the Kandra Emperor was very clear in his heart that there wasn't much of a comparison between the two. First, there was a large difference in numbers. In the Kanla Empire's drill, the 3 regiments of the Imperial Guards and the 2 local regiments added up to close to 100,000 people. In this White Mist Mine incident, there should have been around 200 to 250 soldiers in the Northeast Province that attacked. As for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards at the White Mist Mine, there were only 50 of them, so there were less than 300 people in total. With such a large difference in scale, naturally there wasn't much meaning in comparing. But with a rough comparison, it could be seen that although the Imperial Guards' battle strength couldn't compare to the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards, they weren't that much worse than the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards at the White Mist Mine. At the very least, it wouldn't be like 12 years ago, when they faced the New Flyers' guards, where they couldn't even put up a fight. How many guards does the New Flyer have right now? The Kandra Emperor suddenly asked. The question was rather sudden, but Grand Duke Rostov, who knew well what the Emperor meant, was not surprised. After thinking for a moment, he answered, "According to the figures they have announced, there are only about 18,000 men at present. If the hidden part is included, I estimate it to be more than 25,000, but it shouldn't be more than 30,000. Less than 30,000. The Kandra Emperor knit his brows and thought for a bit before asking, "If we want to kill these 30,000 people, how much do you think we need to pay?" Grand Duke Rostov shook his head with a bitter smile. "Your Majesty, I can't give you an answer. Although the Empire has been investigating the New Flyer in private, the New Flyer is very strict about military magic machines, so we haven't been able to obtain much information about them. You should be very clear that in the current war, it doesn't depend on which side has more people, rather it depends on which side has more powerful military magic machines." "I'm clear on this." The Kandra Emperor nodded to show he understood. "But I want to know, how big is the gap between the Empire and the New Flyer? Is there a chance to cause large casualties to the New Flyer guards?" There should be a chance." Grand Duke Rostov's tone wasn't too certain. After all, the Empire has invested quite a bit in military magic machines, and the results are shocking. I think, at least we won't be unable to fight back like before. That's good. The Kandra Emperor finally revealed a smile. It's good as long as we can fight back. Although the New Flyer guards are strong, there are too few of them. Grand Duke Rostov nodded in agreement. All the countries of the Signs continent, including the 2 empires, although they were worried about the powerful battle strength of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards, everyone knew that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards were just too few. Compared to the other countries that had armies of over 100,000 and the 2 empires that had armies of over 100,000, the New Flyer guards that had less than 30,000 people might be more terrifying than all the other companies, but compared to a country's army, it was far from enough. Even if the New Flyer guards had more powerful military magic machines and their average battle strength surpassed that of the other countries' armies, but their numbers limited their overall strength, so it wasn't impossible for the other countries to resist them. Moreover, the current situation on the Signs was different from 12 years ago. 12 years ago on the Signs, the New Flyer had become enemies with the 2 empires. The other countries on the continent were happy to see this and even gave them a push. But if the New Flyer did this now, even if the other countries couldn't avoid giving them a push, their support for the New Flyer would be much smaller. This was because compared to 12 years ago, the New Flyer's strength was much smaller compared to the other countries, so it wasn't like the other countries didn't have the power to resist. Speaking of this, what is going on in the Northeast Province? The Kandra Emperor knit his brows. Although the Baimeng Mine incident was determined to be a rebellion by the soldiers, the Kandra Emperor still had doubts about the truth of this matter. If it really was like Duke Tim said, the soldiers were dissatisfied with their treatment and rebelled, running off to rob, they shouldn't have come to the Baimeng Mine. Everyone knew that the Baimeng Mine was under the New Flyer's name, and there were New Flyer guards stationed there. No matter how dumb those soldiers were, they wouldn't be dumb enough to challenge the New Flyer guard. "We'd better wait for further reports from Duke Tim," said Grand Duke Rostov. Duke Tim said, "As for the most important thing right now, we have to deal with the new flyer first." As soon as his voice fell, the servant from before quickly ran in again. "Your Majesty, the new flyer's representative is here." The Kandra Emperor and Duke Rostov looked at each other before nodding. "Let him in." ###. A week later, the Kandla Empire and the New Flyer held a press conference, making a joint announcement about the Baimeng mine incident. In the announcement, they said that in the Baimeng mine incident, the troops of the Northeast Province that attacked the Baimeng mine were dissatisfied with their treatment, so they decided to rebel. They tried to attack the Baimeng mine to steal the money and military supplies, but they were defeated by the New Flyer guards stationed at the Baimeng mine. The Kandla Empire said that the soldiers who attacked the Baimeng mine had already been convicted of treason by the Kandla Empire's parliament. According to the Empire's laws, treason was the most serious crime, and they would be killed without mercy once caught. But since they had already died at the hands of the New Flyer, there was no need to pursue this matter. The New Flyer also said that the New Flyer had already reached an understanding with the Kandla Empire on this matter. The Kandla Empire had also given enough compensation for the deaths and injuries of the mine workers. The losses of the New Flyer guards were negligible, so the New Flyer also agreed to not pursue this matter. From the joint announcement of the Kandla Empire and the New Flyer, this matter seemed to have passed without causing too much of an impact. However, the first reaction of everyone who received this announcement was impossible. Whether it was the Kandla Empire or the New Flyer, they were both known for being tough, and rarely would they let go of matters that happened to them. But this time, the two sides quickly reached an agreement and turned this matter into a small one. No one would believe that there was nothing fishy about this matter. Thus, countless people carried out countless strange analyses on the truth of this matter. Among the countless possibilities, the only thing that everyone agreed on was that the Kandla Empire had suffered a huge loss in this matter. Look, the Kandla Empire had lost a regular army squad for no reason and had to provide a large amount of compensation for this incident. But what about the New Flyer? Apart from 2 New Flyer guards being slightly injured and the Baimeng mine being shut down for a period of time due to this incident, there were no visible losses at all. Not to mention that the Kandla Empire had clearly taken a step back this time. In a place that people didn't know, the Kandla Empire must have given a large amount of compensation to the New Flyer. For example, at the press conference, both sides had announced a new cooperation project. It was a cooperation between the Kandla Empire and the New Flyer. They would open a research facility near Chidanlu town, specifically researching the strange phenomenon of the Chidanlu town incident. In the description of this cooperation project, the Kandla Empire was no longer like before. They didn't say that the Chidanlu town incident was related to the magic air conditioner, rather they explained it as a strange phenomenon. This kind of attitude, in the eyes of everyone, was a very obvious concession. But there weren't many people who were surprised or confused by the Kandla Empire's concession. In the past 10 years, all the countries in the signs, including the 2 empires, had never been able to act tough when facing the New Flyer. Just the Kandla Empire had already given in to the New Flyer many times, so it wasn't strange at all. After many times, people were already used to it and could understand the Kandla Empire's concession. In the end, the New Flyer was just too strong, making the other countries feel that they couldn't win. Adding in the fact that the magic machine industry couldn't be separated from the New Flyer, it was normal for them to give in front of the New Flyer. This conjecture eventually became the final judgment of the majority of the people regarding these 2 consecutive incidents. However, in the minds of some people who really knew the inside story, the truth was a completely different matter. Chapter 12:20. This Honorable Kandra Emperor, could this be considered smashing your own foot with a rock this time? Sue put down the newspaper in his hand and said this to Leslie sitting in front of him with a smile. Leslie put down the tea in his hand and gave a laugh. This idiot, he single-handedly stirred up the opposition to your new flyer in the Canla Empire, but he never thought that the nobles under him would be even more stupid than him. They actually misunderstood his intentions and were even more radical than he thought, directly choosing to fight your new flyer. After saying this, Leslie shook his head and gave a sigh before continuing. It seems like your new flyer has suppressed the countries on the signs too much over the years, so their mentality has become strange. Otherwise, no matter how stupid they are, they wouldn't do something like this. No, I'm not surprised at all. Sue revealed a faint smile. The signs of opposition to the new flyer have already appeared several years ago, so it's not strange that it has developed to this point. Moreover, I'm certain that there will be more and more of these things in the future. After all, no one likes being suppressed by others, right? Leslie knit his brows. Since you already expected this, why didn't you take countermeasures earlier? Moreover, based on the news I've heard in the past few days, you really don't care about the new flyer. Could it be that you're really planning on giving the new flyer to Freya? Can you be assured? Then you gave the entire southern continent to David. Could it be that you're assured? Sue asked back with a smile. Leslie laughed. I'm old, I won't be able to take care of things sooner or later. The sooner David takes over my work, the sooner I can be assured. Sue gave a shrug. Isn't this the same as what I'm doing now? The David the two of them were talking about was Leslie's eldest son. Because Leslie had married later than Sue, even if Leslie was a few years older than Sue, David was even younger than Freya. He was only 23 years old this year. With the support of the new flyer, Leslie's influence had spread from Paradise Island to the southern continent over 10 years ago. Compared to the Demon Cloud continent, the southern continent that Leslie named the Levin continent was half the size, and there were far fewer locals there. With the powerful army he had built with the support of the new flyer, after 10 years, he had already swept through the entire Levin continent. He controlled the entire continent, and he had already built a basic road network and magic communication network on the Levin continent. It could be said that Leslie was now the emperor of the Levin continent. Just based on the land under his name, it far surpassed the two empires. As for David, he could be considered the crown prince of the Levin continent. So every time Leslie met Sue, he couldn't help mocking the two empires and the signs countries. There was clearly a vast world outside the signs, but they had to hide in the signs and scheme against each other. Their horizons were too shallow. Of course, Leslie was very clear that compared to the other continents, the signs had a much longer history and had a much larger population. Adding on the rapid development under the leadership of the new flyer, the development of the signs was much greater than the other continents. Staying on the signs continent was without a doubt more attractive to the countries of the signs continent. Leslie had returned to the signs from the Levin continent after 3 years in order to obtain more support from Sue, hoping to increase the development of the Levin continent. One of the most important reasons was that the new flyer had announced last month that they had established a super long-distance magic communication between the Demon Cloud continent and the signs. Leslie had come this time because he hoped that the new flyer could support the Levin continent and establish a magic communication link between the Levin continent and the signs, making it easier for them to contact each other. Like this, I won't have to come here if I have nothing to do. I can just use magic communication to talk. How convenient, Leslie said. Sue nodded. Actually, even if you didn't come to me, I would have thought of a way to solve this problem. When I created this magic communication network, I hoped that it could cover the entire planet. Since the Demon Cloud continent has it, the Levin continent won't be left out. Leslie laughed. I knew that you wouldn't refuse, Sue. Don't be happy too early. I'm not the president of the new flyer right now, so it's useless even if I don't refuse. If you can't convince Freya and the others in the new flyer, then I can't help you. Leslie curled his lips. Humph, as long as you're the president. All right, since the former president has agreed, I don't believe that anyone in the new flyer won't agree. That's not necessarily true. Freya might have her own ideas. Moreover, she has just familiarized herself with the president's job and wants to do something. If you can't give her a good reason, she might refuse you. Sui said with a smile. Leslie laughed. He knew that Sui was hinting at him. No matter how good their relationship was, when it came to such an important project, it couldn't be decided by personal feelings. If the Levin continent couldn't bring enough benefits to the new flyer, or if the new flyer saw enough enticing future benefits, then the new flyer wouldn't help for free. But this was something that the two of them were already used to. Although the new flyer had given Leslie endless support before, allowing him to smoothly occupy Paradise Island, allowing him to control the entire Levin continent. But whether it was Paradise Island or the Levin continent, Leslie had given large amounts of local resources to the new flyer as a return. Although these returns couldn't compare to the new flyer's investment, as long as the Levin continent was developed well, they would be able to reach a balance sooner or later. Other than the super long-distance magic communication between the two continents, Leslie also hoped that the new flyer could help the Levin continent build a railway network. I'm afraid there's a problem with this. Sui shook his head with a frown. Leslie, how many steel mills do you have under you right now? Leslie gave a snort and said with a bit of pride, What? You think that we don't have enough steel production, so we can't build a railway? Let me tell you, I already have 17 steel mills under me. Just last month's steel production was over 3 million tons. Sui was a bit surprised. I remember that last time I asked you, you only had 5 steel mills with a monthly production of 800,000 tons, right? If it's 3 million tons, we can consider building a railway. The last time I saw you was 3 years ago, all right? Leslie waved his hand in dissatisfaction. It seems like you don't care about the Levin continent at all, you don't even know such important data. Sui couldn't help laughing. The Levin continent is your territory, why would I care? Could it be that you're not worried that I'll steal your territory? Che, if you really wanted to steal my territory, the signs would already be in your bag. Why would you need to steal the Levin continent? Leslie curled his lips in disdain before suddenly giving a sigh and asking, Speaking of this, Sui, have you ever regretted it? Regret? What would I regret? Sui asked back in a stunned voice. Regret that you didn't listen to my suggestion and chose to use force to conquer the signs. Leslie had a serious look on his face. It seemed like he wasn't joking. Back then you said that you didn't have time to waste on this kind of thing, but looking at it now, your new flyer is far stronger than the other countries. No matter how slow you are, you should have been able to conquer the continent in 10 years. If you could have unified the continent, your new flyer wouldn't have had so much trouble. Leslie, it seems like you still don't understand my true intentions. What is there to not understand? Don't you want to promote the magic machine industry? Now that you have to deal with all these countries, don't you think it's very troublesome? No, the current situation is even better. These countries are competing with each other, so they have to focus on developing the magic machine industry and improving magic technology. I think it's all used on military magic machines, right? Leslie gave a cold snort. I won't hide it from you. Actually, I've also invested a lot in military magic machines and the results are quite good. After all, I've always been providing you with high-end military magic machines that the other countries don't have. Not only me, but the gap between your new flyer and the other countries in terms of military magic machines is much smaller than before. Otherwise, the Kanla Empire wouldn't have the guts to keep provoking you. It doesn't matter. Sui shook his head with a faint smile. They're willing to focus on developing military magic machines, so that's what I want. Since you're also developing military magic machines, you should be very clear. Military magic machines aren't things that exist on their own. They need a complete magic machine industry and strong technical support. The process of developing military magic machines is actually the process of developing the magic machine industry. Leslie stared at Sue with a frown for a while, and couldn't help shaking his head. To be honest, Sue, I've known you for so many years, but I still can't understand your thoughts. Letting the other countries develop their magic machine industry and develop their technology, what benefits does it bring to your new flyer, or rather, to you? Could it be that it's just for that dream of yours that came out of nowhere? If a person doesn't have a dream, then what difference is there between them and a salted fish? Sue smiled as he spat out a famous quote from the internet from Earth. Moreover, don't you think that being able to fly into space and travel through the universe is a very wonderful experience? Leslie sighed. He still couldn't understand. Alright, space and the universe, a normal person like me can't understand it. But I have to remind you, don't go overboard and end up being swallowed by the Canla Empire. Sue revealed a faint smile. Do you think I'm that stupid? Chapter 12:21. After the new flyer and the Canla Empire issued a joint statement, the signs, which had shown signs of unrest due to the Chidanlu town incident and the Baimeng mine incident, finally returned to peace once again. On the surface, the Canla Empire had chosen to back down in the face of the new flyer's might. This was not much different from the Canla Empire's attitude towards the new flyer in the past 12 years. It was also not much different from the attitude of the other countries in the signs towards the new flyer in the past 12 years. Now, after the two incidents, the situation in the signs seemed to be the same as before. The new flyer was still strong, and the other countries were still doing their best to develop the magic industry in their country. It seemed that nothing had changed. However, in the eyes of some people, the situation was different. First, and most importantly, the Continental Peace Treaty had disappeared. It was replaced by the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines that was signed by the two empires and some other countries. This treaty included more than half of the countries in the signs, including the two empires, but the new flyer was not included. After all, 12 years ago, the two empires were almost completely defeated by the new flyer. All the countries in the signs understood that they could not fight against the new flyer's power, which was far beyond their imagination. Therefore, in the past 12 years, all the countries in the signs coexisted peacefully under the suppression of the new flyer. This allowed the signs to live through a rare period of peace for more than 10 years. Originally, the Continental Peace Treaty had expired 2 years ago. Almost everyone thought that the new flyer would take the lead again and continue to sign this treaty, maintaining the situation of the past 10 years. However, the new flyer did not do so. It was as if they had forgotten about this matter. What was even more surprising was that after the two empires took the lead and proposed the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines, the new flyer did not say a word about it and did not express any objections. It was as if they had acquiesced to the existence of this treaty. After all, the two empires proposed this treaty together with the Lampari Kingdom and other countries was clearly telling everyone that these countries had been secretly developing military magic machines before, which was in violation of the Continental Peace Treaty that they had signed before. Even if the two empires, the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, and other countries said in unison that they had only started developing military magic machines after the Continental Peace Treaty expired 2 years ago, no one would believe such an obvious lie. But even like this, the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce didn't raise any objections and tacitly accepted this situation. The Fresteck Chamber of Commerce's change in attitude was the biggest change on the Signs continent. Many people speculated in private that perhaps the new flyer had placed its focus on the Magic Cloud continent, so it did not pay enough attention to signs, resulting in such a change in attitude. Some people also speculated that it was possible that the military magic machine technology developed by other countries was not inferior to the new flyer. This made it difficult for the new flyer to maintain absolute suppression like before. Therefore, the new flyer wisely chose to take a step back and avoid going head-to-head with other countries. In the end, the new flyer's business in signs still relied on the support of other countries. Secondly, although no country publicized it with great fanfare, after the Treaty on the Restriction of the Proliferation of Military Magic Machines was signed, all the countries in signs began to invest a lot of manpower and material resources in developing military magic machines. In the past, because of the restrictions of the new flyer, it was difficult for other countries to boldly carry out military magic machine-related research and development. But now that the new flyer's attitude was confirmed, other countries could do it without any scruples. Among them, the two empires and the Lampari Kingdom had the most significant achievement. The two empires had deep national strength, and the Lampuri Kingdom had a deep foundation in the magic machine industry. The three countries had never stopped their research in this area, so now that they were free to do it, the results naturally began to appear. At the end of year 3816, the Kandla Empire made an announcement. They said that the Kandla Empire's magic cannon technology had made another breakthrough, successfully firing over 30 small-caliber magic cannonballs at the same time. Half a month later, the Malar Empire also made an announcement. They said that they had successfully tested the magic cannon's long-distance firing, reaching over 30 kilometers. After another 10 days, the Lampari Kingdom made an announcement, saying that they had successfully developed their first fire magic engine. Compared to the two empires, the Lampari Kingdom's research didn't seem that shocking, but thinking about it, it was without a doubt much more significant than the two empires' research. The magic engine was already considered the most important magic machine project in the modern magic machine industry. In the entire magic machine industry, there were countless places that needed magic engines. But before this, there was only New Flyer that could produce a qualified magic engine. If the other countries, companies, and organizations wanted to develop magic machines that used magic engines, they could only buy them from New Flyer. But now, the Lampari Kingdom had developed their own magic engine. It could be said that this was a very significant breakthrough in the magic machine industry. Even if the Lampari Kingdom's fire magic engine was too low in power and it was far from being as stable as New Flyer's magic engine, with this major breakthrough, it meant that the Lampari Kingdom's dependence on New Flyer had decreased by quite a bit. For New Flyer, the Lampari Kingdom's announcement had without a doubt broken their monopoly on the magic engine, which would greatly affect New Flyer's profits. But the New Flyer's reaction to this was worth pondering over. In the following Shinfei Magic Machine Industry Weekly, New Flyer praised the Lampari Kingdom's research on the magic engine, calling it a significant achievement in the history of the Signs magic machine industry. New Flyer was filled with joy because of this. At the same time, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce also expressed that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was willing to provide a part of the fire magic engine technology to the Lampuri Kingdom. They would support the Lampuri Kingdom in grasping the normal power fire magic engine technology even faster. If it was said that people were doubtful of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's praise, thinking that it was fake courtesy, then when the Frestec Chamber of Commerce expressed their willingness to transfer the technology, everyone was stunned. When the Lampari Kingdom developed the fire magic engine, the biggest loss should be New Flyer. Shouldn't they immediately block the Lampari Kingdom and keep the magic engine technology on their own, creating the greatest benefits? Now they were giving away the technology, wasn't this digging their own grave? But thinking about it, this wasn't New Flyer's first time doing this. When it came to the magic machine industry technology, New Flyer wasn't like the other companies on the continent. They tightly sealed it and didn't allow a single bit of it to be leaked. Rather, New Flyer took the initiative to release the technology and directly sold it to other companies. They even gave special help to let the other side grasp the technology better. When Su Yi was the chairman, New Flyer did this. Now that Su Yi's daughter Freya was the chairman, New Flyer did the same thing. This understanding made countless people let out a sigh of relief, and their hearts calmed down. People had been worried because of the attitude New Flyer had shown before, but now that they found that New Flyer was the same as before, using Su Yi's power to promote the magic machine industry on signs, they were able to feel assured. After the two empires and the Lampari kingdom announced their results, the other countries weren't willing to be outdone. When the New Year's came, the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom announced the results of a new technology. They had built the first large transport magic ship on signs that could transport over 100,000 tons. The Frestek Chamber of Commerce's transport magic ships before, the largest one they had was only 80,000 tons. Now that the Nozdormu Business Union Kingdom had built a large transport magic ship that could transport over 100,000 tons, it meant that in the shipbuilding industry, New Flyer had a strong competitor. After that, the Malar Empire announced two more results. These two results weren't in the field of military magic machines, rather one of them was related to military magic machines. They had completed the first self-developed magic tank, and the other was in the field of civilian use. They had successfully developed a single dual-wheeled magic car. In less than 2 days, the Kanla Empire had announced 3 new results at once. After that, the Lampari Kingdom, it was like because they had been suppressed by New Flyer for a long time. Now that the various countries on signs had let go of their hands and feet, there were countless new results that came from the magic machine industry. For a while, the entire signs continent was filled with 100 flowers blooming and 100 schools of thought contending. It was like the magic machine industry on the continent had entered spring, being filled with vitality. In this warm atmosphere, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce was a bit silent. Before this, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce would announce a new achievement every once in a while, so everyone already treated it as normal. But during this time, accurately speaking, in the 2 years since Freya had taken over as New Flyer's chairman, New Flyer hadn't made any new results that were worthy of attention. Of course, it didn't mean that New Flyer's research had stopped. But New Flyer was focused more on magic theory, and in terms of magic research, it didn't attract as much attention as before. This situation made many people think that New Flyer can't keep going, until April of the continent's calendar year 3817. New Flyer announced a piece of news in the Shinfei Magic Machine Industry Weekly that attracted everyone's attention again. New Flyer was about to launch a satellite. Chapter 12:22. You mean, this thing can fly to a place higher than the sky and won't fall? President Cruz looked at the towering object in the distance. Its appearance was very similar to a magic artillery shell, but it was countless times larger. It was called the Magic Launch Vehicle by Su Yi, and his face was full of disbelief. Su Yi rolled his eyes at him as his eyes were filled with disdain. If you've read the recent issues of Shinfei Magic Industry Weekly, or if you've done some research on the theory of physics, you'll know that as long as the launch speed of an object exceeds the first cosmic speed, it can escape the gravitational force of a planet and fly into orbit outside the planet. Of course, it won't fall. President Cruz smiled. I've been very busy recently. Where would I have the time to read the Magic Industry Weekly? Besides, the space you're talking about has nothing to do with our Chamber of Commerce, so of course I don't care. Are you sure it has nothing to do with it? Su Yi pointed to the sky and asked. Let me tell you, the planet under our feet isn't the only one in the vast universe. In fact, there are countless different planets in places that you can't see with the naked eye, and it's very likely that there are also inhabited planets among them. Don't you want to build houses on those alien planets? Build buildings on alien planets. President Cruz's eyes lit up, but then he shook his head. Forget it. Right now, you're just sending something into space. If you can really go to another planet, who knows how long you'll have to wait. Maybe. I won't live to see that day even if I die. Sue smiled, thinking that although President Cruz didn't know the principle of rocket launch, and didn't even know the specific meaning of space, it didn't prevent him from making the right inference. Indeed, as President Cruz said, even if the satellite launch was successful today, it was still a long way from successfully sending people into space. As for traveling through space, the interstellar cruise that Sue dreamed of, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Even if science and technology on Earth were developing faster and faster, it had been more than 50 years since Sue transmigrated, but there was still no possibility of interstellar travel. With the current technology level of science, it was almost impossible to achieve this. But the difference between science and Earth was that this was a world of magic. And magic was something left behind by the Abyss Demon Clan, which had a glorious history. It could create many incredible possibilities. For example, with the current technology level of science, it was impossible to launch a satellite. But with the power of magic, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce used countless times less time to complete this research compared to Earth. Of course, this also included the powerful theory and mechanical foundation that Sue brought from Earth. After chatting with President Cruz for a bit, Sue looked at the rocket in the distance and sighed in his heart. If there were people from Earth who transmigrated to this world and knew the truth about this rocket, they would definitely laugh their heads off. Because this magic launch vehicle claimed to be carrying a man-made satellite, but in reality, this man-made satellite was just an empty shell with nothing inside. Most of the man-made satellites launched from Earth would carry all kinds of missions, such as weather satellites, reconnaissance satellites, communication satellites, etc., but this man-made satellite could not complete these missions due to the limitations of current technology, so even if it flew into the sky, it could not do anything. But there was a high-definition magic illusion camera inside, which might be able to capture images of the atmosphere and space. But no one could guarantee that it would be able to successfully transmit these images back. As for the magic space above the atmosphere, the current science had no concept of it. Even the dragons, who had the strongest bodies, could only barely fly to the top of the atmosphere in their dragon form, but they could not break through the atmosphere. So the process of launching the man-made satellite this time could be considered a test of the magic space above the atmosphere. There were various magic arrays on the man-made satellite that were carefully designed by the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce, which could test the various reactions of the magic space in the outside world and deduce the general situation of the magic space above the atmosphere. To put it simply, this launch of the man-made satellite was actually a multifaceted attempt by the new flyer, so it was very significant. But Sue turned his head to look at the large group of people behind him and found that their eyes were all focused on the magic launch vehicle in the distance. From time to time, they would point and whisper with uncontrollable surprise and shock on their faces. It was clear that most people's attention was the same as President Cruz's. They were only focused on the point of sending an object higher than the sky, but they did not understand the true meaning of this. "Mr. President, it's about time." A middle-aged man wearing a new flyer uniform came over and whispered to Sue. At the same time, he handed a magic communicator to Sue. Seeing the excited expression on his face, Sue smiled and picked up the magic communicator. "Hey Freya, I'm only here to watch the ceremony today. You're the one giving the orders." Freya's voice, that was still full of vitality and clear and pleasant, came from the magic communicator. However, because of her years of experience as the president, there was a hint of calmness in her voice. "Father, this matter is so meaningful, don't you want to give the orders yourself?" Sui laughed and said, I don't want to steal the limelight from you, the president. Okay, don't worry about me, you arrange it yourself. I'll just watch from here. Freya muttered under her breath, but still agreed readily. Okay, then I won't be polite. Sui put down the magic communicator with a smile and asked the new flyer staff member who came to inform him, Are the representatives from the other countries in the main control room now? Yes. This time, the two empires sent their top figures. The Lampari kingdom even sent Prince Raymond to watch the ceremony in person. After a pause, the staff member continued, Mr. President, they have asked where you are many times. Are you really not going to show up? Sui shook his head and said, I don't want to steal the limelight from Freya. If Steele finds out, she will definitely scold me. The staff member knew that Sui had made up his mind, so he no longer tried to persuade him and retreated to the side. Hey Sui, didn't you always say that your dream is to fly in the sky? Although launching a satellite is still a bit far from your dream, it represents the first step. Do you really not want to host this ceremony? President Cruz asked. No need. My dream is to fly in the sky, not to host a ceremony that doesn't have any specific meaning. Sui's eyes fell on the giant magic launch vehicle in the distance. He then looked up at the incomparably blue sky, as if he wanted to directly penetrate the atmosphere and go into space. After waiting for another 20 minutes, it was time for the rocket to launch. New Flyer hosted a short ceremony and officially announced the start of the satellite launch. Sui didn't have any objections to this, but because he remembered the solemn and sacred aura of the first satellite that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had when he was young, he felt that the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's handling of this was a bit perfunctory. But he also knew that it wasn't just the people of the Signs continent, even the people of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce who participated in this project were shocked by launching something into space. But because it surpassed their understanding, they didn't feel it was real, so they didn't know how to deal with this matter. One day you will know the significance of today's event. When Sui saw a ball of light suddenly lit up under the magic launch vehicle in the distance, he let out a sigh of relief. He repeated to many people that his dream was to fly in the sky. Now that he saw the first step of this dream with his own eyes, he didn't feel particularly excited. Maybe it was because he had done too many things for this, so it was natural for him to be able to achieve this? Or maybe it was because he knew that it was impossible to achieve this dream in his lifetime, so he didn't care much about it. However, when he saw the light under the magic launch vehicle in the distance become brighter and brighter, then a cloud of thick smoke spewed out. The incomparably huge magic launch vehicle slowly rose into the sky, then gradually accelerated, and finally flew into the clouds at high speed. Sui couldn't help but feel excited. However, compared to the initial shock of the people around him and the sudden burst of cheers after the rocket disappeared into the clouds, Sui's reaction was still much calmer. The magic communicator in his hand suddenly began to vibrate. Sui picked it up and immediately heard Freya's excited voice. Dad! Success! Success! It really flew up. God is... Oh no. God isn't up there, it's our company's artificial satellite in the sky. Sui finally couldn't hold back his laughter. Freya had been the president for more than 2 years. She had always played the role of a mature and steady president, so she always tried to suppress her lively nature. Now that she finally had a chance to be unbridled, it was no wonder she was this excited. Okay, Freya, don't be so excited. This is only the first time. We will launch more satellites in the future. You will get used to it sooner or later. Compared to this, the most important thing for you now is to settle our guests. Sui looked up in the direction of the command platform in the distance and narrowed his eyes slightly. The successful launch of the artificial satellite was something to be excited about for him, but for the distinguished guests who came to watch this ceremony, it might not be the same. Chapter 12:23. Although the night in early May was still a bit cold, compared to last month, it was already a very comfortable temperature. After dinner, the people of Wimbledon City left their homes in twos and threes. They went out for a walk after dinner, digesting their food and relaxing at the same time. In the square outside the city, there were quite a few people gathered, and it was very lively. At first, the people in the square just strolled around in private, or gathered together to chat, or sat down to do some simple and convenient exercises. But when it was close to 7 at night, almost all the people in the square gathered in front of a large magic illusion projector, waiting for the new moon news that was broadcast at 7 every night. The predecessor of this new moon news was the New Moon News Weekly. But as the program became more and more popular, it went from being broadcast once a week to once a day. Even if many families had already bought a small magic illusion projector and signed a contract with the New Moon Chamber of Commerce, they could directly watch the various programs of the New Moon Chamber of Commerce. Of course, they could also watch the New Moon News. Many people were still used to watching it together because they could exchange ideas with the people around them. For example, in yesterday's New Moon News, there was a piece of news related to the Rio Chamber of Commerce that created a heated discussion. Because of the Chidanlu Town incident, the Rio Chamber of Commerce's magic air conditioner sales had dropped, so they decided to develop a new magic air compressor. Yesterday's news related to the Rio Chamber of Commerce was that the Rio Chamber of Commerce announced that they had developed a new magic air compressor and had tested it on the new magic air conditioner. In the coming summer, the Rio Chamber of Commerce would be selling this new magic air conditioner to the public. Seeing this news, many people were doubtful. From the Chidanlu Town incident to the Rio Chamber of Commerce announcing that they had developed a new magic air compressor, to announcing that they had developed a new magic air conditioner and were preparing to sell it, it had only taken a few months. People were doubtful because of this. New Flyer had taken over a year to develop the magic air conditioner, so why did the Rio Chamber of Commerce only take a few months to develop a new magic air conditioner? Although the Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce had always claimed that they had a strong technical foundation in the field of household magic machines, it was really worrying that they would introduce a new magic air conditioner so quickly. If it was New Flyer who did this, no one would suspect anything. After all, the magic air conditioner was invented by New Flyer. If they compared technology, the Rio Chamber of Commerce couldn't even compare to New Flyer. But New Flyer had already publicly stated that they didn't acknowledge the results of the Kanla Empire's investigation of Chidanlu Town at all. They claimed that the magic air compressor module inside the magic air conditioner couldn't cause people to fall unconscious, even if it was connected to the long-distance magic transmission network. At first, many people doubted this statement and thought that it was an excuse by the New Flyer. But as the New Flyer promoted the long-distance magic transmission network in the Principality of Constantine, these doubts decreased. Because of the Chidanlu Town incident, the Kanla Empire and the New Flyer had their own opinions. The Kanla Empire insisted that there was a hidden danger in the long-distance magic transmission network, so the Kanla Empire didn't plan on introducing the long-distance magic transmission network promoted by the New Flyer, which made many people dissatisfied. Whether it was the reports of the New Moon News, the reports of the major newspapers, or the personal experiences of many people, they all proved that the long-distance magic transmission network could make people's lives more convenient and increase the efficiency of using household magic machines. It could also save a lot of money, so it was definitely a very valuable thing that was worth promoting. But because the Kanla Empire couldn't introduce it because of the Chidanlu Town incident, naturally many Kandra people were dissatisfied. And because of the Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce's performance, many people were angry with them. So when the Rio Tinto Chamber of Commerce announced that they would be selling the new Rio Tinto brand magic air conditioner, there weren't many people who thought well of it. The discussion of this news continued until the crowd in the square dispersed yesterday before gradually dissipating. In today's new moon news, it was unknown if there would be any similar news that would attract the attention of countless people. The large magic illusion projectors in the square weren't idle. They had been playing some advertisements and magic illusion films before, but when it was 7, all the magic illusion projectors in the square turned into the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's logo, which represented the beginning of the New Moon News. The beginning of each day's New Moon News was a brief introduction of today's New Moon News. People were already used to understanding today's news through this part. Generally speaking, during the brief introduction, they would only briefly introduce a few of the most important pieces of news. Soon, they would move on to the official broadcast. But today's New Moon News began and it was different. Friends, do you really understand the land under our feet? After saying the usual "Welcome to the New Moon News" speech, the male anchor's first words stunned everyone. Do you really understand the world that we live in? The female streamer's next sentence confused everyone even more. Next, I ask everyone to watch a video. As soon as the male anchor's voice fell, the magic illusion projector dimmed. When it lit up again, there was a scene of wilderness. The male anchor's narration sounded at this time. This is the scene of New Flyer launching the first satellite. Everyone can see that there are many people gathered in the distance. They are the people who came to watch the ceremony. Hearing this explanation, everyone immediately reacted. When New Flyer launched the satellite last month, the New Moon Chamber of Commerce had broadcasted it through the magic illusion projector. Almost everyone present had seen the magic launch vehicle fly into the sky. The shock of that time hadn't faded from everyone's minds, so when they heard this explanation, they found that this scene was very familiar. But the perspective of the magic illusion projector was a bit strange. When people were watching the live broadcast, they were watching the Gundam magic launch vehicle from a distance like the crowd. But now, it was like they were watching the crowd from above. It was like they were on the giant magic launch vehicle. The female anchor's voice sounded at this time. Friends, the video we are watching now is the video taken by the magic illusion projector installed on the magic launch vehicle. So we can see that from this angle, we can see the crowd in the distance looking in this direction, which is the direction of the magic launch vehicle. This time, even the people who didn't react before understood. The video suddenly shook and there was a loud noise that came from the video. What everyone is seeing now is the magic launch vehicle taking off. After a while, the ground gradually moved away from the magic illusion projector, which meant that the magic launch vehicle was taking off. Very soon, the ground in the video moved further and further away. The people on the ground had already turned into black dots and couldn't be seen at all. Of the people watching the New Moon News, there were very few people who had the chance to fly into the sky, so there weren't many people who had experienced being in the sky before. Although they could understand the situation in the sky through the magic illusion projector of the New Moon Chamber of Commerce before, they had never seen it from a first-person perspective like this before. Of course, they had never experienced it like this before. As the magic launch vehicle quickly took off, the ground moved further and further away, and the sky came closer and closer. The confident people found that the ground in the video had already turned into an arc. This was enough to prove that the New Flyer's claim of, "there is a giant planet under their feet," was correct. Most people nervously watched the sky in the video as it came closer and closer. They were all looking forward to what it would be like after they broke through the sky. Very soon, a white cloud appeared in the video and people found that the video had turned black. There were only some strange sounds that came from time to time. The darkness didn't last long and the video quickly lit up again. There was sunlight that was much brighter than usual. After a while, the video went dark again and quickly lit up again. After repeating this several times, The video suddenly opened up and a boundless dark sky appeared in the video. In the distance in the sky there was a burning ball of fire. Based on its position, that should be where the sun was. But based on its appearance, people found that the sun was very different from what they saw on the ground. Now, the magic launch vehicle has finally broken through the atmosphere and entered space. What everyone is seeing now is the situation in space. The female anchor's voice sounded. Everyone stared blankly at the incomparably gorgeous and shocking scene presented in the magical illusion. No one reacted for a long time. After repeating the mirror image of space for a while, the image on the magic illusion changed again. What everyone is seeing now is the true appearance of the planet under our feet. Everyone's eyes popped out at the same time. A giant planet that was mostly blue appeared in the magic illusion. Chapter 12:24. That means the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's magic launch vehicle was indeed launched into space? Yes. How high is space from the ground? This subordinate doesn't know. But according to the data released by New Flyer, the satellite they successfully launched was around 130 kilometers above the ground. 130 kilometers above the ground? How far is this place from the New Flight Commerce main base? It should be over 2,000 kilometers. Tell me, since the Frestek Chamber of Commerce can send a magic launch vehicle that high in the sky, if they just let it fly, wouldn't it be able to fly to very far places? Based on the rocket launch principle and data released by New Flyer, there is this possibility. Then, is it possible to directly fly from the New Flight Commerce main base to here? This subordinate doesn't know. Say, if New Flyer didn't load a satellite on the magic launch vehicle and instead used magic missiles, wouldn't it be possible to directly hit me from the New Flight Commerce main base? This subordinate doesn't know. Doesn't this mean that New Flyer already has the ability to launch a super long-range attack at any time? This subordinate doesn't know. If New Flyer is willing, no matter how strong our city defenses are, it doesn't mean anything? This subordinate doesn't know. You don't know? You don't know this and you don't know that. What do you know? This subordinate. This subordinate doesn't know. ###. Sir Chairman, this is the height of the synchronous orbit that I calculated. Is there a problem with it? Sanchely turned around and pointed at a number on the magic illusion in front of him as he asked Sui. 32,714 kilometers? Sui narrowed his eyes and thought for a bit before nodding. Since this is the data calculated by your team, I believe that there is no problem. Sanchely revealed a proud smile. He patted the workbench beside him and said, Sir Chairman, it's just calculating data. It's nothing for this heavenly god. Really? Sui chuckled as he looked at the gigantic metallic monster in front of Sanchely, and a sense of absurdity welled up in his heart. Since Sanchely had been recruited into the Frestek Chamber of Commerce, he had been designing automation programs the entire time. He had already obtained outstanding results, allowing the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's semi-automatic and even fully automatic machine tools to expand, taking over almost all the machine tool market on the Signs continent. But Sui never would have thought that Sanchely would develop this monster in front of him. The metal monster, which Sanchely had named Celestial God, was so huge that it filled the entire room. In terms of function, it was clearly a computer. Yes, this was a byproduct developed by Sanchely based on the Magic Automation program. In terms of principle and function, it was almost no different from the computers on Earth. Of course, this magic computer was still in a very primitive state, so its performance was around the same as the first computer on Earth. Only in terms of the basic calculation method, because it used the stimulation of magic signals, it was a bit different from the computers on Earth that used electric currents to control it. Moreover, for someone like Sui who had some understanding of both, this celestial god, was actually much more advanced than the first computers on Earth. The first computers on Earth were made of countless electronic tubes. Then they relied on these electronic tubes that could only handle the simplest signals to perform more complex calculations. But the celestial god developed by Sanchely directly used the stimulation of magic signals. It could even perform complex calculations and send out the results as command. There was no doubt that it was much stronger than the first computers on Earth. The reason why the performance of both sides were similar was because of the difference in technology and Sanchely's lack of personal knowledge. If the technology of signs was improved and Sanchely had more complete mathematical knowledge, then the performance of the celestial god would increase by leaps and bounds. It would definitely surpass the first-generation computers on Earth. But even like this, when Sui learned of the existence of the celestial god, he couldn't help being shocked. Of course he hoped that he could have a computer on Earth to help him with his work. He also thought that after the magic machine industry on signs developed to a certain degree, there might be something similar to a computer. But he never thought that the celestial god would appear this early, this quickly. For this, Sui couldn't think of any explanation. He could only attribute it to Sanchely's talent. If it wasn't for the existence of this kind of monstrous person, Sui estimated that it would take at least 20 years for the celestial god to appear. "Sir Chairman, why do you want me to calculate the synchronous orbit?" Sanchely asked in a curious voice. "Oh, this thing has a lot of uses. For example, if I want to use the communication satellites to cover the entire planet, then it is necessary to have several communication satellites in suitable positions." "Is that so? But didn't the company already create high-altitude magic signal beacons, solving the need for long-distance communication between the two continents?" "That's not the same." Sui shook his head. Although the high-altitude magic signal beacons can solve this problem, their existence is unstable and they are easily affected by the high-altitude airflow and other abnormal situations. So when we communicate with the Demon Cloud continent, there are often situations where the signal is affected or even interrupted. But the communication satellites in synchronous orbit don't need to worry about this. And because they are far away from the ground, the range they cover is very wide. In theory, even 3 communication satellites are needed to cover the entire planet. And if we use the high-altitude magic signal beacons, according to my calculations, we need at least 400 of them. You should be very clear about the difference in cost. Sanchely nodded to show he understood. Other than this, the synchronous orbit satellites have some very special functions. It's not obvious now, but you'll know in the future. At this point, Sui kept him in suspense. Sanchely looked at him strangely and didn't ask further. "But Sir Chairman, according to my calculations, if we want to launch a synchronous orbit satellite, the power of the magic launch vehicle far surpasses our current abilities, so I'm afraid we can't launch this satellite right now." "You secretly calculated this yourself, right?" Sui revealed a faint smile. Sanchely's face turned red as he nodded in acknowledgement. "Yes." He immediately understood. "What? Was there a mistake in your calculations? But I've already imported all the data and calculated it many times, right? If we want to launch a magic launch vehicle that weighs several dozen tons to a place 30,000 kilometers above the ground, the power requirement is shockingly large. Not to mention our company not being able to do it now, I even feel that it will be very hard for our company to do it in the future." Sui couldn't help laughing as he patted Sanchely's shoulder. "Sanchely, you should talk to the researchers of the Academy of Magic's Astronomy and Physics departments. Your calculations may be correct, but before you even begin to calculate, you've already made a fatal mistake. Launching things into the sky isn't like you think, it's just throwing things into the sky. Actually, it requires less power than throwing things into the sky." "Really?" Sanchely scratched his head awkwardly. Sanchely awkwardly scratched his head. I don't know much about this, so it seems like I need to study a bit more. No, the most important thing for you right now isn't to study astronomy, rather you should study mathematics. Su-yi pointed at the giant heavenly god behind Sanchili. To me, the heavenly god is even more important than launching a satellite. I hope that you can spend more effort on this in the future and work hard to increase its performance. Sanchili turned to look at the heavenly god with a bit of doubt in his heart. This thing was just to make it easier for him to calculate when designing the automatic production magic machines. He thought that it was just a convenient product, but he never thought that Sir Chairman would place such importance on it, so it really was a pleasant surprise. All right, Sir Chairman, I will properly study it. But how is this related to you wanting me to study mathematics? Sanchili asked in a doubtful voice. You don't know now, but when you reach a certain point in your research, you will find the importance of mathematics, Sui said with a serious look. Sanchili immediately and earnestly assented. After discussing a few more matters related to the heavenly god with Sui, Sanchili suddenly had an idea. He asked Sui, Sir Chairman, since we can send a satellite into the sky this time, can we send people up in the future? Of course. Sui gave a firm nod before looking at Sanchili. What? Do you want to travel in space? Sanchili immediately revealed a look of endless desire. Of course I do. I've dreamed of seeing the planet under our feet from space. It must be very beautiful. Haven't the images of planets from space been shown countless times? Could it be that you're still not tired of seeing them? How could it be the same? Seeing it through a magic illusion, how could it compare to seeing it with your own eyes? Sui gave a shrug. All right, I can only tell you that we can definitely send people into space in the future, but I'm not certain when we can do it. When the time comes, I'm even less certain if the person sent up will be you. Flying into space is my dream, Sanchili seriously said in a soft voice. Sui couldn't help smiling. Flying into the sky was the slogan and dream that he had been shouting. Not many people believed it before, but now that the satellite was successfully launched, it suddenly became the most popular phrase on signs. Chapter 12:25. After leaving Sanchili's research facility, he returned to the streets of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's main base. Looking around, the feeling of absurdity that appeared in Su-yi's heart when he saw the heavenly god became even stronger. Just 30 years ago, this world's technology was very backward and their civilization was still in a half-slave and half-feudal society. But now that just 30 years had passed, there were many products that could be compared to Earth's technology. For example, the various household magic machines in the shops, the magic cars running all over the streets, the magic airships flying in the sky, or the giant transport magic ship leaving the harbor in the distance. If a person from Earth transmigrated here, they definitely wouldn't think that they had transmigrated to another world. They would just think that they didn't know when they had transmigrated to another world. Everything here could be considered a copy of the cities on Earth. Of course, first one had to forget about the elves, dwarves, and beastmen that could be seen on the street. The reason for this situation was mainly because of the technology that Su-yi had brought from Earth. The new flyer had been developing magic machines based on Earth's technology for 30 years, so naturally it was a copy of Earth's situation. Moreover, it wasn't just the new flight commerce main base. Right now, all the countries in the signs were following the new flyer, or rather following the path that Su-yi had planned to develop their magic machine industry. Almost all the cities were following the new flight commerce main base and Shinfei City. When the long-distance magic transmission technology that the new flyer was promoting completely covered the signs, the cities in the signs would become more and more like the cities on Earth. They would become more and more modern. In just 30 years, the backward signs had undergone such a large change, allowing most of the people in the signs to live a life that they could only dream of. Of course Sui was proud of this. But was this really the right thing to do? Sui looked around and there was a bit of doubt in his heart. This wasn't his first time having this kind of doubt. Last month, when the New Moon Chamber of Commerce and the Azhara tribe worked together to release the Magic Illusion Sleeping System, Sui had this kind of doubt. 3 months ago, when the Nightsong tribe and the Moon Shadow tribe worked together to develop a new crop, Sui also had this kind of doubt. Around this time last year, there was a company in the Marlow Empire that announced that they had developed a new magic water purifier. It could purify any dirty water into drinkable water through this machine, so Sui also had this question. Even more than 10 years ago, when the magic communication network that was developed had the ability to transmit images, Sui had already had this kind of doubt. Combining these doubts with the absurd feeling in his heart, Sui finally came to a conclusion. It was that he had underestimated this world too much. Although he came from the technologically advanced Earth, and compared to this world, Earth's technology was much more advanced, making signs very backward. However, signs had the special thing of magic, which had many possibilities that he didn't expect. For example, the unexpected products that he thought of before, or the magic computer that Sanchali had developed alone. The people of this world could also rely on their own abilities, relying on the mysterious tool known as magic to make many shocking achievements. All they needed was some inspiration. But now, Sui and the new flyer had given them enough inspiration, so they immediately exploded with creativity. Just based on this, the people of Signs were not inferior to the people of Earth. In addition, regarding magic itself, Sui was already one of the top archmages on this continent, and even had the qualifications to call himself the strongest mage in Signs. But the more he researched magic, the more he felt that there were more secrets hidden in it. Even after Sui proposed the scientific concept of magic, combining the scientific theories of Earth with magic for research, he found that the essence of magic was far beyond the modern science of Earth. One of the simplest examples was the spatial transmission magic. The modern technology of Earth only had the concept of spatial transmission in science and fantasy. They gave a rough idea of the possibility of spatial transmission, but they felt that spatial transmission was very difficult. Even if the technology was developed for another 100 years, it might not be possible to succeed. But on this backward Signs, they had already grasped the technology of spatial transmission magic. What was even more shocking, or rather, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry, was that the mages of Signs could skillfully use spatial transmission magic to teleport their own bodies, but they didn't have the ability to teleport other objects. In the past, Sui couldn't understand this, but after exploring the Abyss Demons, he finally guessed a part of the reason. If magic was something passed down from the Abyss Demons, then it was natural that the elves of Signs could only grasp the surface, but not the principles of magic. 10,000 years ago, the Abyss Demons obviously wouldn't patiently teach the elves how to use magic, and the elves, who had a low status at that time, couldn't even come into contact with the core magic technology of the Abyss Demons. They could only rely on their own intelligence to grasp part of the usage of magic. After another 10,000 years, the specifics of magic would have been lost to history. So even though the current Signs had a rich variety of magic, and their usage was strong enough, in Sui's opinion, due to the obvious lack of basic theories, and the deviation of direction that he didn't know when, magic wasn't of much help to the Signs, causing this world to remain in a backward state. It wasn't until Sui's arrival that the people of Signs started to pay attention to these things, relying on his complete theoretical foundation of Earth's science and technology, and the research and development that he created for the practicality of magic. And because of the various inspirations brought about by Sui and the new flyer, the people of Signs gradually diversified their research on magic. All kinds of results sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, and among them were countless new inventions that Sui didn't even think of. That was why Sui felt that he had underestimated the people of signs. Since he transmigrated to this world, he always felt that he was the main character of a book, taking care of everything by himself. He wanted to monopolize all the research and development of magic machines, guiding this world in the direction of his heart with one hand. However, since a few years ago, he found that once he let the people of this world do it themselves, the abilities that they exploded with made him sigh in amazement. As for the absurdity of this, it was because the magic left behind by the Abyss Demon Clan was clearly a high-level technology that the Abyss Demon Clan had grasped, but it had been distorted by the people of signs. Now that Sui had arrived, the people of signs' view and research on magic had returned to its practical application. But because the technology Sui brought from Earth was different from the magic of the Abyss Demon Clan, many of the research and development seemed illogical and strange to Sui. For example, Sanchali's magic computer. Although there were hints from Sui after Sanchali developed it, it was very different from the computer in Sui's mind. Sanchali couldn't even understand the principles behind it, but he could still make the magic computer work normally and use it with ease. According to what was said on Earth, this was a black box technology. Or to put it bluntly, the magic machine industry on the Signs continent was completely built on the black box of magic technology. Is this really good? Sui couldn't help knitting his brows. As a professional high-level mechanical engineer from Earth, it was very hard for him to start using a technology without understanding the principles behind it. This was because this meant that there were many uncertainties in this application and there were many unpredictable dangers. However, even if Sui was an archmagus, he couldn't truly analyze all the principles behind magic. This was because the magic theory in signs was very different from the magic theory in the Abyss 10,000 years ago. Sui alone couldn't solve this problem. Of course, black box technology didn't mean that it couldn't be used. Strictly speaking, many of the science and technology on Earth could not be said to be completely and thoroughly analyzed. This was because science was, in the end, constantly denying oneself and constantly increasing one's understanding on the basis of denial. Therefore, there was no such thing as a true thorough analysis. Science was like this and magic was like this. Moreover, in the end, the so-called magic was also a type of science. It was just different from the science and technology on Earth, so there was no need to distinguish between them. Thinking of this, Sui took a deep breath. When he looked around again, the sense of absurdity and dissonance in his heart was completely suppressed by him. The situation in front of him was the current situation of this world. He had no intention of forcefully changing it and there was no need to do so. He didn't have the ability to do so. Sui reached into his chest and took out the magic communicator he used for work. Cindy, help me contact the emperors of the two empires. Tell them that I want to meet with them in private. Chapter 12:26. Your Majesty, when was the last time we met? Sui looked at the Kandra Emperor sitting in front of him with a faint smile, looking straight at him with an indifferent expression. I haven't seen Chairman Su in a long time. If I remember correctly, the last time we met was when we signed the Continental Peace Treaty 12 years ago. The Kandra Emperor also had a faint smile and a calm expression, like he was chatting with Sui like an old friend he hadn't seen in a long time. If possible, of course he wanted to kill this hateful fellow in front of him right now. However, this was an impossible fantasy. If he killed Sui here, the chaos that would arise would be something that even he as the incomparably respected emperor couldn't take. It was even possible that the entire Kanla Empire would fall into a desperate situation. Not to mention that even without these scruples, it was almost impossible to kill Sui. Sui had already become the strongest archmagus 10 years ago, and after 10 years of cultivation, with his shocking talent, his current strength had already reached the peak of all archmagi. With such powerful strength, it was almost impossible to assassinate him. They couldn't even surround and kill him. 10 years ago, the Kanla Empire had tried to do this, but they had paid a painful price. Now that 10 years had passed and Su Yi's strength had increased again, the Kanla Empire didn't even dare try. The Continental Peace Treaty. Su Yi revealed a smile of deep meaning. Speaking of this, Your Majesty, was the Military Magic Machine Restriction Treaty first proposed by you? The Kandra Emperor's expression was a bit awkward. The signing of the Military Magic Machine Restriction Treaty. If one had to be a bit harsh, it was simply slapping the new flyer's face. Now that Su Yi had mentioned it, even if the Kandra Emperor was shrewd, it would be hard for him to maintain his smile. When the Continental Peace Treaty expired, our Kanla Empire, the Mala Empire, and the other countries of the continent were all waiting for Chairman Su to take the lead and renew it. We never thought that Chairman Su would never mention this matter, so we thought that you forgot or didn't care. But like Chairman Su said 10 years ago, the signs needed a stable and peaceful environment suitable for the development of the magic machine industry. As one of the two empires of the continent, our Kanla Empire naturally had to shoulder this responsibility. Therefore, I propose to sign a new treaty, which is the Treaty on the Restriction of Military Magic Machines. Hearing the Kandra Emperor's explanation, Su Yi couldn't help revealing a smile. Actually, with the Kandra Emperor, there wasn't anything that needed him to explain it's Su Yi's expressions. Perhaps only in front of Su Yi would he give this kind of explanation that clearly showed signs of backing down. The reason was very simple: the new flyer was just too much of a threat to the Kanla Empire. Even if he was the Kanla Empire's emperor, he had to be wary. Of course, the most important reason was Su Yi himself. If it was Freya, the new flyer's chairman, sitting in front of him, the Kandra Emperor would be much stronger. Your Majesty, I don't have any objections to the Military Magic Machine Restriction Treaty. After all, the Continental Peace Treaty was to let the countries of the signs have an environment where they could peacefully develop the magic machine industry. Now that this goal has been achieved and after 10 years of development, most of the countries of the continent have developed a magic machine industry, so the significance of this treaty isn't that big. Moreover, this kind of treaty should be made by the countries of the continent. Our new flyer is only a company, so we aren't qualified to meddle in this. Hearing Su Yi's words, the Kandra Emperor's expression changed. Chairman Su, your new flyer really isn't planning on meddling in this treaty? Of course not. Su Yi looked into the Kandra Emperor's eyes and said in a sincere voice. We are only a company, we aren't qualified or interested in meddling in this matter. Really? The Kandra Emperor knit his brows. Then how do you explain your company meddling in the dispute between our Kanla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom? The Kandra Emperor's meddling in the dispute was referring to the new flyer organizing some companies and public welfare organizations. When the Kanla Empire and the Mana Magic Kingdom were at war, they had entered the Mana Magic Kingdom and gathered the refugees of the Mana Magic Kingdom. The Kanla Empire had protested to the new flyer several times before, so Su Yi was very clear on this. Your Majesty, our company was only there to reduce the casualties of the citizens. We didn't meddle in the war, right? If we really wanted to meddle, what do you think the result would be? The Kandra Emperor's expression froze, but he couldn't refute this. If the new flyer had really meddled in the war between the two countries, whether the new flyer supported the Kanla Empire or turned around to support the Mana Magic Kingdom, the Kanla Empire wouldn't have been able to obtain such large benefits. So Su Yi's words weren't wrong. But the Kandra Emperor still didn't dare believe Su Yi easily. This fellow didn't seem to be interested in power all these years, but as the emperor of a large empire like the Kanla Empire, as one of the people with the most power on the continent, the Kandra Emperor was very clear on the attraction of power to people. Su Yi didn't show it before and he didn't show it now, but that didn't mean he wouldn't show it in the future. Your Majesty, the reason why I came to see you today was to tell you something in public, Sui suddenly said. The Chidanlu Town incident and the White Mist Mine incident, we are very clear on what happened. What role did your Kanla Empire play in the middle? The Kandra Emperor's face sunk. Chairman Su, you can't speak nonsense. Although these two matters happened in the Empire is filled with regret. What do you mean by saying this now? Sui revealed a faint smile and waved his hand. There's no need to be nervous. Your Majesty, this is your Kanla Empire's royal palace. It's impossible for me to place any listening devices here, right? I just want to make some things clear to you this time. I know that you, or rather your Kanla Empire, has always been wary of our new flyer. But I'm telling you now, I have no interest in fighting for control of the continent with your Kanla Empire. My interest will always be in developing the magic machine industry. So you and the Kanla Empire don't need to guard against me and the new flyer. The Kandra Emperor took a deep look at Sui for a while before slowly shaking his head and saying with a sigh, Chairman Su, perhaps I can believe you, but how can I believe your new flyer? Even if it's you, it's impossible for you to represent the will of the new flyer, right? Sui was silent for a bit before giving a sigh and nodding. Yes, the new flyer has already developed this much, and even if I am its founder, it's impossible for me to represent the will of over 200,000 people in the new flyer alone. So what meaning is there in saying this to me? The Kandra Emperor looked at Sui with a bit of ridicule. We're not children, so let's not waste time saying these meaningless words, all right? I thought that you would meet me in private to discuss some cooperation that isn't convenient to discuss in public, but now it seems like there's no such thing. After saying this, the Kandra Emperor looked like he was sending him off. Your Majesty, I didn't expect you to change your attitude just by meeting in private. This time, I just wanted to tell you my attitude and some ideas. As for whether you believe it or not, it's not within my consideration. A trace of anger flashed in the Kandra Emperor's eyes. Since my ideas aren't within your consideration, what are you here for? I just want to remind you that the enemy of your Kanla Empire has never been the new flyer. I think that you can understand the meaning of this, but I also want to remind you of something else. His Majesty Klein is willing to believe my words and hopes that we can maintain a good relationship with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce. As for the Lampari Kingdom's side, I don't think I need to say anything else, right? After saying this, Sui stood up and gave a nod to the Kandra Emperor before turning to leave. The Kandra Emperor watched Sui leave and didn't say anything to keep him. When Sui disappeared from sight, the Kandra Emperor let out a sigh of relief and his expression relaxed. Looking in the direction Sui left in, the Kandra Emperor rubbed his forehead and felt a headache coming on. Based on his intuition, he felt that Sui was very sincere today and his words were sincere. But from an objective and rational point of view, he didn't dare believe Sui's words. Although he admitted that Sui was right, the Kanla Empire's true enemy had never been the new flyer. Or rather, it shouldn't have been the new flyer, rather it should have been an enemy on the same level like the Malar Empire. But the new flyer's influence on the signs was just too great, so the Kanla Empire couldn't ignore it. It wasn't exaggerated to say that if the new flyer had been biased towards the Mala Empire or the Lampari Kingdom, the Kanla Empire would have already ceased to exist. It was because of this that the Kanla Empire worked hard to develop the magic machine industry in their country. They did their best to improve their military magic machine technology, hoping that they would be less restricted by the new flyer. But he was very clear that while the Kanla Empire was rapidly improving, the new flyer definitely didn't stop either. The gap between the two sides had definitely decreased, but it shouldn't be small enough for the Kanla Empire to have no scruples about the new flyer. This was where the Kandra Emperor was tangled. He was very willing to believe Sui's words, but reality forced him to doubt everything. He was the most respected emperor of the Kanla Empire. He wasn't allowed to make a single mistake, so he could only doubt. But Sui had just said that the fellow from the Mala Empire was willing to believe him. Why was that? Was it just a threat? The Kandra Emperor felt that he had been on the throne for close to 40 years, and he had never met a situation as hard to choose as this. For a while, he fell into deep thought. Chapter 12:27. Sui never expected to just meet and say a few words to make the emperors of the two empires believe in his attitude. The most effective way, of course, was to take action. After meeting the emperors of the two empires in private, Sui prepared for 3 months and decided on the basic rules for the continent's Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation. Then he unexpectedly announced that he was resigning as the chairman of the continent's Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation. The people in the signs were surprised, but they were also waiting for Sui's next arrangements. After he stopped being the president of the New Flyer, he ran to establish the Continent Magic Industry Technology Foundation, which made all the countries in the signs entangled for a long time. Now that he had stepped down from the position of the president of the Continent Magic Industry Technology Foundation, what was he going to do? However, after everyone waited for 3 months, there wasn't a single piece of news related to Sui. Whether it was the Frestec Chamber of Commerce or the continent's Magic Machine Industry Technology Foundation, Sui had never appeared in public again. Even if many people and forces inquired in private, the information obtained was very little. It was as if Sui suddenly disappeared from the signs. Without definite news about Sui, there was no way to make others feel at ease. Because Sui's influence on the signs was too great, if he did something in front of everyone, it might give many people a headache, but at least it would make people feel at ease. But now that he had suddenly disappeared, people couldn't help but secretly guess if he was plotting something. Fortunately, this situation didn't last long. 3 months later, definite news about Sui was finally revealed from the New Flyer. As many people guessed, Sui did indeed disappear from the signs. Because he went to the Demon Cloud continent again. After hearing this news, countless people immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Let this guy go to the Demon Cloud continent to mess around, as long as he doesn't stay in the signs. Even if he wanted to dominate the Demon Cloud continent, that was his freedom. It had nothing to do with the countries on the signs. Among these people, the ones who felt the most assured because Sui was heading to the Demon Cloud continent again were the emperors of the two empires, especially the Kandra Emperor. Sui left signs once again, which made what he said in private even more believable. Perhaps he really wasn't interested in seizing control of signs. ####. The refreshing sea breeze blew in their faces, accompanied by the sound of waves surging in their ears. Their noses smelled the faint fishy smell of seawater, and they felt the somewhat hot but not too intense sunlight sprinkling down on their heads. It was simply the best experience that could be enjoyed on the beach. When Sui was on Earth, because he often went on business trips, he had experienced many beaches in China and abroad, but there wasn't a single beach that was as perfect as this one. Whether it was the extremely fine sand, which felt like stepping on silk, or the clear seawater, which was so clear that one could see the crab running amok at the bottom of the water, all of it deeply displayed its extremely impressive charm to the guests present. In this kind of environment, taking out a lounge chair, lying down comfortably, and taking an afternoon nap was simply the highest form of enjoyment. "Hey, Steele, when you retire, how about we live in seclusion on this island?" Sui let out a soft sigh before asking Steele beside him with a smile. Steele, who was lying on the lounge chair beside Sui, turned her body. Because of being exposed to the sun for the past few days, her bronze skin shined brightly under the sunlight. Along with her soft and healthy body, she gave off an enticing charm. Every time he saw Steele in a swimsuit, Sue-yi would thank Elder Lysania from the bottom of his heart. If it wasn't for her using the elven secret technique to preserve her youth, with Steele who was already close to 60 years old, no matter how much she took care of herself, she would have already aged. She definitely wouldn't be as enticing as she was when she was young. Of course, compared to Agnes who was making a sand castle with several children in the distance, she was still lacking a bit. From the day Sue-yi met Agnes, it had already been 33 years, but Agnes' appearance hadn't changed at all. She was still as youthful as a human girl. Even her personality was still the same. She was still young and lively, not showing any signs of having given birth to a child. Retire. Steele turned around to look at Sue-yi. Her lips curled slightly and her smile was filled with disdain. If you're really willing to retire, then I'll happily choose to live here with you. But, can you really retire? Sue-yi curled his lips and was speechless. Steele had been with him for 30 years and knew him like the back of her hand. How could she not see through his true thoughts? You, being able to accompany us and the children for 3 months, I'm already very happy. Steele gave a sigh. It's impossible for you to be so idle all the time. Moreover, even if you're willing, there are many people who aren't willing. Sue-yi was silent for a bit before shrugging and helplessly saying, At least I won't care about the matters of signs. That will save me a lot of energy. Are you sure? Steele looked at Sue-yi with eyes filled with doubt. For signs to have its current situation, it's all because of your hard work. Are you really willing to ignore it? If something really happens to signs, can you really ignore it? Sue-yi nodded with certainty, of course. I've already helped signs lay a solid foundation. Even without me, signs will still develop according to their own needs. It can even be said that if I stay, it will hinder the free development of signs. So this time I've decided to leave. It's a decision I've made and won't change. Steele took a deep look at Sue-yi before pursing her lips into a smile. Then what if something happens to Freya? You won't care? Sue-yi glared at Steele angrily. You know what I mean. Could Freya treat it as a big deal? If she's in danger, how can I, as her father, ignore it? But remember, as long as she's not in danger, then even if something happens to New Flyer, I won't interfere. As for what New Flyer will become in the future, it'll all depend on her own abilities. Are you really willing to give up on New Flyer? This is the company you founded and brought up. It can even be said to be your other child. Steele sighed. If it's my other child, then this child has already grown up and will continue to grow. As for what it will become in the future, that's its own business. It doesn't have much to do with me. Sue-yi tilted his head and looked in the direction of signs in the west. He lightly shook his head. Actually, it's not just New Flyer, even if it's signs, I still have feelings for them. But now that I've decided to let them develop freely, of course I have to let them go. If those fellows from the 2 empires and… Steele paused after saying this. And if Seveni can understand your thoughts, then things will be much simpler. Right? Speaking of Seveni, Sue-yi, don't you have any special arrangements? Sue-yi looked at her in surprise. What special arrangements? Steele looked at Sue-yi and hesitated for a bit before gathering her courage to speak. Could it be that you still don't know that Prince Raymond is the child Seveni gave birth to for you? After saying this, Steele looked at Sue-yi with a nervous look. Actually, Seveni had told her this secret a long time ago, but she never told Sue-yi. Now that she suddenly confessed to Sue-yi, she was a bit worried about Sue-yi's reaction. However, Sue-yi didn't have any special reaction. He just nodded and gave a sigh. It seems like my guess wasn't wrong, it really was Seveni back then. As for Betty and Carol, they can only be considered incidental. Steele rolled her eyes at Sue-yi before giving a soft snort, doing it with 3 women in one night in the Lampari Kingdom's royal palace, and one of them is Her Majesty. Chairman Sue, don't you feel proud? Sue-yi couldn't help laughing as he reached out to pinch Steele's face. What? You didn't say anything when you knew about this, so why are you being jealous now? Steele stretched out and sat up in the chair. I've never been jealous because of you, but I have to remind you. Prince Raymond will definitely inherit the Lampari Kingdom's throne in the future, and you are his blood-related father. Have you thought about what to do in the future? After throwing down these words, Steele stood up and walked towards the beach. Seeing Steele's slender and full figure walk away, Sui couldn't help giving a bitter laugh. What else could he do? Seveni didn't hesitate to drug him to do this. It was clear that she had already considered this situation. Seeing that Prince Raymond was his and Seveni's blood-related son, Sui couldn't completely ignore him when he was in danger. But what surprised Sui was that even if he had guessed this through some clues, Seveni still hadn't said anything. Rather, it was Steele who couldn't help saying this first. Could it be? Seveni wanted to wait until the most crucial moment to say it? Sui leaned back into the chair. The image of Seveni holding his hand on the bed while holding Prince Raymond's hand flashed in his mind, making him feel that it was filled with drama. When he was thinking about outer space, there was a black spot that appeared in the sky. It quickly turned into a giant shadow and fell down, landing right beside Sui. A large amount of sand was sent flying by the shadow, flying at Sui. If it wasn't for Sui reacting fast enough and using a magic shield to block it, he would have been buried by the sand. Hey, Chairman Su, outer space really is fun. Chapter 12:28. Sui raised his head with great effort, but all he could see was a huge shadow covering the top of his head. Even the sunlight was completely blocked. He could only helplessly say, "Hey, Cassandra, can you transform into your human form first? My neck will break sooner or later if I talk to you like this." Oh, the shadow flashed, and the huge shadow instantly disappeared, turning into the appearance of a human girl standing next to Sui. It was Akali's good friend, the red dragon Cassandra, who was the first to come to signs and appeared in front of Sui. You think the sky is fun? Sui glanced at Cassandra with a puzzled expression. Apart from the stars everywhere, most of the places there are empty spaces. What's so fun about it? You know what the sky looks like? Cassandra blinked, and then suddenly understood. Oh, your new flyer launched artificial satellites, so you know what the sky looks like. But Chairman Su, the sky is not as simple as it seems. You will only know how interesting it is after you fly up and experience it yourself. What's so interesting about it? Sui was even more puzzled. Although he had never had the opportunity to experience space travel on Earth, he had seen countless scenes of the sky from various news and documentaries. He didn't find the sky interesting at all. It's fun enough for me to fly around without worrying about hitting anything, Cassandra replied confidently. And it's easier to fly in space. I don't even need to flap my wings. The speed is much faster than in the sky. It's so exciting. Nonsense, there's no air in space. It's useless even if you flap your wings. Sui rolled his eyes at her. But then again, when you fly in the sky, the frequency of flapping your wings is very low, right? I think you don't usually flap your wings when you fly. That's true, but it's a habit. Besides, flapping my wings makes it easier to fly. Then why don't you flap your wings a few more times? Won't it make you fly faster? Because it's tiring. Cassandra waved her arms and mimicked flapping her wings. Look, this is so tiring. How can it be as convenient and easy as using magical elements to fly? Sui could only roll his eyes. Creatures like the dragon race really didn't conform to biological common sense. She clearly had a pair of wings, and it was obvious that she was an aerial creature that relied on wings to fly. However, because she had mastered the tool of magic during the evolution process, she gradually evolved to not rely on wings. Now, even flapping her wings was a little tiring and troublesome for a red dragon like Cassandra. Fortunately, the lifespan of the dragon race was long enough. Up until now, there had only been a dozen or so generations of dragons. If it had been any longer, their wings might have even degenerated. After thinking about it, Sue decided to give up on this problem and began to care about the problem that he really needed to care about. Cassandra, you said that it's easier to fly in the sky. Apart from the fact that there is no air resistance, is there any other factor? Is it related to the mana space in space? Yes. Cassandra nodded affirmatively. The mana space in space is far more stable than the mana space below the atmosphere and above the Earth's surface. I've been flying for several hours, at least over 1,000 kilometers, yet I didn't find any spatial anomaly. Well, that's indeed much more stable. Although the mana space was a different space filled with magical elements, it had an inseparable relationship with the real space. In areas with particularly abnormal environments in the real world, the mana space would also be affected to varying degrees and show instability. The most obvious example was near the crater of a volcano. Due to the influence of the volcano, the magical elements in the mana space were particularly inclined to reflect the state of fire magical elements, and thus became extremely unstable. This phenomenon was explained by the signs mages in the past as the extremely unstable and dangerous fire magical elements near the volcano. Although the descriptions were similar, the traditional view of magic was much worse in terms of understanding and explanation of the essence. Because of this, the mana space on the surface of the planet would actually always appear in all kinds of unstable states, and the areas that produced such states were called unstable mana spaces by the mages. The more serious ones would be listed as forbidden areas by the Sorcerers' Guild, warning the mages not to approach them. Of course, before this, no one in this world had ever thought about what it was like above the atmosphere, and naturally they had never experienced what the mana space in space was like. After the successful launch of the artificial satellite by New Flyer, the image of space was successfully transmitted back by the magic illusion camera on the artificial satellite, which proved that Sue had previously proposed that there was a huge sphere under their feet. At the same time, it also proved another conjecture of Sue's, which was that the sky was still full of magical elements and there was a mana space. It was not like what many traditional mages thought, that the sky was a forbidden area for life and magic. After hearing this news, the first to react was not any human, but the Dragon Clan. As a good friend of Akali, Cassandra could be said to be one of the first people to learn about the news of the artificial satellite. After learning about the successful launch of the artificial satellite and the situation in the sky, she immediately came up with a bold idea: fly directly into space. In the beginning, whether it was Akali or Sue, they had all opposed her crazy idea. This was because even if the sky was filled with magical elements, which allowed the magic illusion camera to capture images, without enough data, nobody knew what the situation in the mana space in space was like. If the mana space in space was different from the mana space on the ground, or if it was very dangerous, then Cassandra would simply be courting death if she flew up. Even putting aside the influence of the mana space, just flying directly into space without any protection was courting death. However, Cassandra was really interested, and she was very confident in her ability to adapt to the environment as a dragon, so she insisted. Sue could not persuade her, so he had to bring forward the plan slightly. During this time, New Flyer launched 2 more artificial satellites into the sky. Compared to the first artificial satellite, there was much more equipment on these 2 satellites. Not only were there 3 more high-frequency and high-definition magic illusion cameras, there was also a custom-made magic space detector. Based on the magic fluctuations it emitted, it could perform preliminary detection of the mana space in space. Other than this, there were also dummies made with the elves' bionic magic that were put in, using this to check the basic environment of space. With these carefully prepared instruments, New Flyer finally obtained a large amount of detailed data on space. Inferring from the data, the mana space in the sky was more stable than the mana space on the ground, but from the perspective of magic, it was a more suitable place for magicians to display their abilities. At the same time, the data of the outer space of this planet was not much different from the outer space of the Earth in other aspects. Although it was absolutely impossible for humans to survive without any protection, it was not impossible for the dragon race, whose physical strength far exceeded that of humans, and whose vitality was countless times stronger than humans. It was not impossible to survive. Cassandra, who obtained this data, flew into the sky before Akali and Sue-E could react. At first, she couldn't break through the atmosphere and enter space. However, after she quickly mastered the method, she easily completed the magnificent feat of breaking through the atmosphere with her physical body and entering space. Sue-E still remembered the scene of Cassandra playing in space before returning safely. Other than Sue-E, although the others were also surprised, compared to him, the shock in their hearts couldn't compare to the shock he felt. After all, Sue-E's understanding of space far surpassed the others. It was because of this that he was very wary of space and was very cautious. The others were the natives of this world and didn't know much about the sky before, so although they felt that Cassandra flying into space was very powerful, they weren't that shocked. This was because in the eyes of almost all the humans and other races, the dragons' bodies were far stronger than normal, so there shouldn't be a problem for them to fly into space. The reason why the dragons didn't do this before was entirely because the dragons had scruples about the place outside the sky. Now that New Flyer's research had discovered that there was also a magic space outside the sky, it was theoretically feasible for the dragons. Then Cassandra, this impulsive and fearless fellow, suddenly broke through this layer of window paper, making the fantasy of the dragons flying into the sky a reality. "Hey, Chairman Sue, I can't wait to tell my people this news." Cassandra waved her arms proudly and excitedly said to Sue-E. "If my people know that they can fly freely in the sky, and it's even more enjoyable than flying in the sky, they will be very happy." Sue-E smiled bitterly. Dragons had long lifespans, so in their dragon life, they would feel bored most of the time. Therefore, when they discovered the magic illusion film brought by New Flyer, they were so obsessed because it could bring them a lot of novel experiences. Now that Cassandra had discovered something even more novel and exciting, it was certain that her people would go crazy. Thinking that there might be a large group of dragons flying in space in the future, Sue-E felt extremely strange. Thinking of this, Sue-E's expression suddenly changed and he looked at Cassandra intently. "Hey, Cassandra, tell me honestly, did you find trouble with those artificial satellites?" Chapter 12:29. Artificial satellite? Chairman Sue, what are you saying? Space is so big, how could I touch an artificial satellite? Let me tell you, the magic space in the sky is frighteningly stable and I can easily move magic elements, really. Cassandra. Sue cut Cassandra off with a calm face. Akali told me that dragons disdain lying. Cassandra's expression froze as she blinked her eyes. After being stunned for a while, she lowered her head. Chairman Sue, I just happened to see the artificial satellite fly by and thought it was fun, so I chased after it to see who could fly faster. I didn't do anything else. Seeing Cassandra finally admit it, Sue revealed a faint smile and waved his hand. I know. Otherwise, would I have just asked you and not come looking for trouble? Cassandra immediately let out a sigh of relief. When she raised her head again, she was in high spirits again. Hey, Chairman Sue, since you already know, why are you scaring me? The company's magic illusion camera on the artificial satellite only captured a black shadow. It wasn't confirmed that it was you. I was just casually asking, but I never thought you would admit it, saving me the trouble of guessing. Cassandra was stunned before angrily shouting in shame. Chairman Sue, you humans really are all liars. You did fly by the artificial satellite, didn't you? Or perhaps you have already harassed our company's artificial satellite for a long time, right? Sui asked back with a smile. Cassandra was stunned before angrily giving a snort. So what if I did? I didn't destroy it. I just felt that it wasn't fun to be alone in the sky, so I had it accompany me. Sui couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. If they were to calculate in terms of age, Cassandra would be over 200 years old this year. But in terms of mental age, she was even younger than Agnes, who was less than 100 years old. Apart from the fact that dragons had a longer lifespan than elves, it was also because the social environment of dragons was simpler. Young dragons like Cassandra were basically not involved in worldly affairs. If not for this, Cassandra wouldn't have easily trusted the exploration fleet sent by New Flyer and agreed to let them report to Signs. Then, she easily trusted Sui and the others, and even became good friends with Akali. Of course, the Dragon Clan was too powerful, and there weren't many things that could threaten them, so they didn't need to be on guard. Didn't you just say that flying in space is fun? Sui asked with a smile. It's not that interesting after a long flight. Cassandra shook her head. That's why I've decided. This time, I must go back and tell my clansmen that we can all fly up into the sky and play together. Well, Cassandra, do you think all of your people have the ability to fly freely in space? Sui suddenly asked. Of course. There are many people in the clan who are stronger than me. If I can do it, of course they can too. That's not necessarily true. Sui shook his head with a serious expression. Cassandra, before you broke through the atmosphere, we did a lot of preliminary work to ensure the various data in space and calculated that the space environment would not pose a fatal threat to you. That's why we agreed to let you fly up. Although you can fly freely in space now, this is just an exception for you. It doesn't mean that all of your clansmen can do it. If something goes wrong, do you want to see your clansmen explode and die the moment they break through the atmosphere? A trace of fear flashed across Cassandra's face. It's not that scary, right? Didn't I fly for so long and still be fine? As I said, this is just an exception for you. Then what should I do? I still want to ask those guys in my clan to see who can fly faster in space. Do you really want to? Sui stared at Cassandra and asked. Of course. That's good. Now you can fly into space. Although it's just an exception, it can represent the general situation of the dragon race. The reason why I said it was an exception just now is that the data we have collected about space is not perfect. We can't be 100% sure, so we can't let your clansmen take the risk. But if the data collection is perfect enough, we can know the situation in space like the back of our hand. I understand. Cassandra interrupted Sui. You just want me to help you collect data, right? Smart. Sui smiled. Aren't there artificial satellites? But artificial satellites are not as flexible as you in the sky. After all, artificial satellites are artificial satellites, not the dragon race. The data they collect is difficult to use as a practical reference. Is that so? Then I understand. Cassandra nodded. She touched her chin and thought for a while. Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and she reached out to Sui with a smile. Sui looked at Cassandra's delicate and white palm in front of him in astonishment. What are you doing? If you want me to work for you, you have to give me a salary, right? Cassandra smiled and tried to make a treacherous expression. Sui stared at her with wide eyes. Did Akali teach you this? Do I need Akali to teach me this? Isn't every human like you do this? Cassandra replied righteously. Since every human needs to be paid for what they do, of course I need to be paid for what I do for you. Isn't that fair? It's very fair. Sui rolled his eyes at her, then his heart moved. He thought for a while and continued, In that case, Cassandra, go back and ask for me if there are any other clansmen who are willing to work for us. If there are, I will also give you a satisfactory reward. Didn't you just say that it's best for our clansmen not to fly into space and take risks? Their work is not just to fly into space to help us collect data. There are many other jobs that are suitable for them. I see. By the way, if you are willing to learn to use human trading methods to get what you want, that's even better. I can directly give you gold coins as compensation. This will be more convenient for both of us. If we need gold, we have a lot in our clan. We don't need you to give us gold at all, Cassandra said proudly. Don't worry. I just hope that you can provide me with something more fun. For example, more magic movies or something. My clansmen will definitely ask for these things like I do. You don't have to worry about our excessive requests. No. What I want you to learn is just to adapt to our human trading methods. Although gold coins are still considered a common currency now, currency is not the same as gold. Maybe we will use paper to trade in the future. Paper. Cassandra stared at Sue with a look of disbelief. Sue was naturally too lazy to explain the basics of currency to her. He smiled and changed the topic, then quickly reached a verbal agreement with Cassandra. Cassandra was willing to work for the new flyer. At the same time, she would go back and persuade her Red Dragon clansmen to work for the new flyer, and the new flyer would give them a suitable reward equivalent to gold coins. As for the price, Cassandra tentatively set it at half of Akali's current salary, which was 60 gold coins a month. The other clansmen would discuss it based on the specific work. Seeing Cassandra excitedly transform into her dragon form and soar into the sky, Sue couldn't help but smile proudly. He could hire a dragon to work for him for only 60 gold coins a month. This was simply the most cost-effective transaction he had ever made. And Cassandra's work was irreplaceable. Not to mention 60 gold coins a month, even 600 gold coins a month was not a lot. In the future, when Cassandra worked for a long time, her work scope could be further expanded. For example, with her ability to fly freely in space and even easily catch up with the speed of artificial satellites, she could completely undertake the daily maintenance, repair, and even recovery work of artificial satellite. Compared to the lack of follow-up work for artificial satellites on Earth, Sue now had a killer weapon like Cassandra. This was simply enough to make all the national space agencies on Earth envious. Hey, Sue, don't you feel ashamed of deceiving an innocent dragon girl? Seeing that Cassandra had flown away, Steele ended her swim and returned to Sue's side. How can this be called deceiving? Sue was not surprised that Steele heard his conversation with Cassandra. With Steele's current strength as a great mage, as long as she was willing and the other party was not on guard, it was easy for her to hear any sound hundreds of meters away. I told her everything clearly. I didn't hide anything from her at all. Humph, you didn't tell her how special her job is. The dragon race is special, Sue said with a serious look. I can't wait to take this opportunity to make the Dragon Clan officially our partner. But for the sake of the future, I can't set the price too high at the beginning, right? Well, I understand. Steele nodded and sat down beside Sue. After a moment of silence she asked, Sue, it seems that you really intend to put all your energy into the Demon Cloud continent? Yes. Compared with the signs, the situation on the Demon Cloud continent is much simpler. As long as the problem of the goblins is solved, the Demon Cloud continent can be built according to my wishes. Then if something happens on the signs, what will happen? Sue looked at Steele with a smile and touched her smooth face. To be honest, Steele, have you ever considered retiring? Chapter 1230. Sue had already disappeared from signs for a long time. Other than the sporadic news about the Demon Cloud continent that came back every once in a while, there was also some news about Sue. However, the Demon Cloud continent was over 10,000 kilometers away from signs, making everyone feel like it was a completely different world. So as time passed, the impression of Su-yi in the hearts of the people of Signs gradually faded. Moreover, 2 years after Su-yi left Signs, Su-yi's wife, Steele, resigned from her position as the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's president and disappeared from the public eye. It's said that Steele and Su-yi's other wives moved to a small island on the endless sea after retiring, living a life of seclusion, not caring about the world at all. Like this, the impression that Steele left on people also faded. Of course, this didn't mean that the mark that the two of them left on Signs would disappear because of this. The new flyer under the leadership of Freya continued to develop over the years, holding an absolute position in the magic machine industry, having a strong influence on every country in Signs. The New Moon Chamber of Commerce was also developing quickly. As the cost of production kept falling, the price of the magic illusion projectors that normal families used also kept falling. Now the most common one only cost 18 gold coins. So in every family in Signs, they had already bought a magic illusion projector as a standard. If someone didn't have a magic illusion projector in their home, they would be laughed at by everyone around them. It would even make it hard for their families, young men, to marry the girl they loved because of this. When the magic illusion projectors were popularized in every household, the magic illusion network that the New Moon Chamber of Commerce had been promoting also entered every corner of Signs. The various magic illusion programs that the New Moon Chamber of Commerce made were deeply rooted in people's hearts with the magic illusion network, attracting everyone's attention. When they came home from work each day, they would turn on the magic illusion projector and watch the magic illusion show, which was something that every family had to do. Moreover, just last year, the New Moon Chamber of Commerce and the Azhara tribe had publicly announced their magic illusion production technology. They cooperated with 123 countries at once, opening their own magic illusion production department in these 123 countries. They specialized in making magic illusion programs that belonged to these countries. There were only 146 countries that had complete sovereignty over the Signs. With the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's actions, the magic illusion program was able to enter all the Signs countries. Because every country had their own magic illusion program production department, the magic illusion programs that people could watch were no longer limited to the New Moon Chamber of Commerce. There were many more choices. Moreover, because some small countries didn't have any special restrictions, in these small countries, if they used a magic illusion projector, they could watch several dozen or even several dozen countries' magic illusion programs. Although the quality of the magic illusion programs produced by these countries couldn't compare to the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's magic illusion programs, having more choices was naturally very good for normal people. The most important thing was that by watching the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's magic illusion programs, they could understand the continent a bit more and understand the other races a bit more. By watching the magic illusion programs of their own country, they could understand the things that were closest to them. And by watching the magic illusion programs of other countries, they could deepen their understanding of other countries. They wouldn't feel like they were in another world like before. Adding in the fact that transportation was very developed, it wasn't that hard to go to another country. So the New Moon Chamber of Commerce's Walk More, See More slogan through a travel program became the consensus of everyone on Signs. Rich people would travel around and see for themselves the things they saw on the Magic Illusion TV show. Poor people could also travel around or travel on a budget or look for better opportunities and jobs. On the current Signs continent, it was no longer like before. Everyone lived their entire lives within 50 kilometers of where they were born and had never seen the outside world. The mobility of people on Signs had never been this high before. There were even many people who weren't satisfied with staying in Signs and chose to head to a new continent. Most people went to the Demon Cloud continent and a small portion went to the southern continent. There were even a few people who were even more extreme. They formed their own exploration fleet and went into the endless sea, heading to the new continents that had already been explored, but hadn't been listed by the new flyer. These people who called themselves explorers said that they would create a new world in the new continent and become the king of the new continent. These explorers' slogans were loud and clear, but it was hard to say what they would become. But according to some newspapers, among these exploration fleets, there were fleets supported by some countries and companies on signs. They wouldn't go to the Demon Cloud continent to steal territory from the new flyer, nor would they go to the southern continent to compete with the Levin dynasty, who had already established a firm foundation there, so naturally they would set their sights on the other continents. Actually, the countries on signs knew that developing new continents would bring them great benefits, but because signs was in a critical period of development, there wasn't a single country that was willing to transfer large amounts of manpower and resources to develop new continents, delaying their own development. Other than these changes, the biggest change in signs over the years was the people themselves. 30 years ago, before the new flyer appeared, although signs was big and had many countries, their total population didn't exceed 100 million. But with the appearance of the new flyer and the agricultural magic machines, as well as the fertilizer from the elves, it greatly increased the grain yield of the various countries on signs, allowing people to have more grain to feed more people. Adding in the fact that in the past 20 years, there hadn't been any large wars on signs, so the population of signs had swelled up like a balloon. According to the population statistics from the Kanla Empire 2 years ago, just the Kanla Empire alone had over 100 million people. The Malar Empire had also done the same last year, having close to 100 million people. If the populations of the other countries were added together, the population of signs would have already broken 1 billion. This was a very shocking number. It had to be known, in the history of signs, no matter which race was ruling, the total population had never surpassed 100 million. Now that it had broken the 1 billion mark, it was simply a miracle. For this phenomenon, the New Moon Chamber of Commerce worked with the most famous newspapers and the magic illusion programs of all the countries to produce a program called Population Explosion, revealing the reason for this. After a bunch of analysis that people could understand and couldn't understand, they finally came to a conclusion. The reason why the population of signs had such a shocking increase was because of the increase in grain yield. The deeper reason was the change brought by the increase in productivity. The so-called productivity was a new concept that the New Moon Chamber of Commerce proposed through this program. The core of this concept was that productivity determined the standard of living of a society, and only technology could bring about an increase in productivity. Only then could people have more food, more clothes, better houses, and more comfortable lives. So if they wanted to live a better life, they had to develop technology and increase productivity. The program didn't say it clearly, but everyone knew that the so-called technology in signs was the magic machine industry technology. This wasn't something that the New Moon Chamber of Commerce needed to explain through this program. No matter which country or which person, they all had a deep understanding of this. Not to mention that the increase in productivity brought by the increase in technology would make their lives better. On the other hand, if they didn't pay attention to this, they would fall behind others and their family would fall behind others. If it was a big problem, the entire country would fall behind other countries. This kind of lesson wasn't rare at all. Just 3 years ago, the Kingdom of Druz and the Kingdom of Mecca had a conflict over 2 mines on the border, which eventually turned into a war. Because the Kingdom of Druz had a deeper understanding of military magic machines, they were equipped with more military magic machines, so their army was stronger. Therefore, they had a great advantage in the beginning of the war. But because the Kingdom of Mecca had a more complete magic machine industry system and their production scale was larger than the Kingdom of Druz, after entering the war, they had a shocking amount of power. In terms of logistics, they far surpassed the Kingdom of Druz. So after the war lasted for a year, it was the Kingdom of Druz that gradually couldn't hold on. In the end, after a year and a half of continuous war, the Kingdom of Druz's army completely withdrew from the Kingdom of Mecca and was forced to sign a ceasefire agreement with the Kingdom of Mecca. Not only did they give up the 2 mines that caused the war, but they also gave the other mines near the border to the Kingdom of Mecca. At the same time, the Kingdom of Druz was forced to fully open their domestic market to the Kingdom of Mecca and couldn't impose additional tariffs on any of the Kingdom of Mecca's products. Compared to the mines, the latter condition was the real fatal one. The Kingdom of Druz had originally been behind the Kingdom of Mecca in the civilian sector because of their strong development of military magic machines. Now that they fully opened their domestic market to the Kingdom of Mecca, once all kinds of products from the Kingdom of Mecca flooded in, it would definitely squeeze out the Kingdom of Druz's local magic machine industry. In the long run, the Kingdom of Druz would only have less ability to resist the Kingdom of Mecca. Similar to the war between the Kingdom of Druz and the Kingdom of Mecca, there had been countless incidents in the signs in recent years. Several countries rose because of this, and several countries declined or even perished because of this. But no matter what, the magic machine industry in the signs had been developing rapidly and had never shown any signs of decline. From another perspective, after Su-Yi disappeared for a few years, the signs had taken great strides towards his ideal state. Chapter 12:31. Chairman, the royal city of the goblins is in front of us. Hart, the former captain of the new Flyer Guards and the current commander-in-chief of the Demon Cloud Continent, pointed to a dark shadow on the horizon in the distance and said to Su-Yi, "Chairman Su, let's launch an attack immediately." Without waiting for Su-Yi to speak, a Demon Cloud Continent native male elf Virus, who had skin darker than the elves of the Stein continent, spoke up with an excited look, looking eager to give it a try. "In front of our army, the goblins will definitely not be able to resist." "Yes, Chairman Su, since we have already fought here, what are we waiting for? These goblins only dare to hide in this so-called King City. They don't even have the courage to come out and fight us." This time, the one who spoke was the representative of the Demon Cloud Continent's native dwarves, Main Firehammer. "Yes, they must have been scared by us." The voice of the small native of the Demon Cloud Continent, Coven, was very loud. "We should get rid of them in one fell swoop." "Yes, Chairman Su, don't give these goblins any chance to breathe. There are at least tens of millions of goblins on the Demon Cloud Continent. If we give them time to organize, then we will be in trouble." Su-Yi's gaze fell on the last native of the Demon Cloud Continent, Menz, and nodded gently. The surrounding native races of the Demon Cloud Continent had obviously been bullied by the goblins for a long time, and their resentment towards the goblins was very deep. Now that they finally saw the opportunity to eliminate the goblins in one fell swoop and become the master of the Demon Cloud Continent, they were naturally impatient. But among so many races, only the representatives of the indigenous people were more considerate. He didn't know if this was because of the advantages of the human race itself, or because of the excellent qualities of the human representative, Menz. Then he turned to look at the so-called royal city of the goblins that occupied a large piece of land in the distance, but it was in a mess and didn't look like a city at all. Su-Yi narrowed his eyes, but he didn't immediately agree to their request and immediately ordered an attack. After putting down the matter of the signs, most of Su-Yi's energy was focused on the Demon Cloud Continent. In order to complete the development of the Demon Cloud Continent, it was imperative to remove the obstacles of the gnomes. Therefore, after 2 years of preparation, the new Flyers base in the Demon Cloud Continent joined forces with the other indigenous races of the Demon Cloud Continent to launch a large-scale cleanup operation against the gnomes. The reason why Su-Yi called it a big sweep and not a war was because he felt that it couldn't be called a war at all. In front of the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's guards, who were equipped with large amounts of military magic machines, the gnomes who could only rely on their weak bodies and crude weapons couldn't fight back at all. Before, the goblins were able to dominate the demon cloud continent. The most important reason was that they had an extremely terrifying number advantage. However, in front of the military magic machines possessed by the New Flyers guards, which were extremely powerful and had a large area of effect, their advantage in numbers was meaningless. More often than not, the goblins would be defeated in less than a few minutes under the bombardment of the New Flyer guards, even when they were in the tens of thousands. As a result, the entire journey was a complete sweep. If it weren't for Su Yi's desire to stabilize his territory, he would build bunkers to stabilize the defense after occupying every new area, and then build roads and railways to connect the areas that had already been occupied. With the exaggerated disparity in combat power between the New Flyer guards and the goblins, the so-called Royal City of the Gnomes would have been captured as early as 4 years ago. Now, the big sweep had begun. After 4 years, the area controlled by the New Flyer base had increased from a mere 50,000 square kilometers to millions of square kilometers in one fell swoop. It had increased by hundreds of times. Now, the New Flyer, in cooperation with the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, had paved the roads and railways under their name on more than half of the land of the Demon Cloud continent. They had actual control over these areas, making it impossible for the goblins to attack. As long as the royal city of the gnomes was captured, the only recognized royal power of the gnomes would dissipate, and the goblins on the Demon Cloud continent would have no room to resist. However, Su Yi didn't intend to do so. Heart, go and arrange it. Let the guards attack the city, but don't really launch an attack. Su Yi ordered. Heart looked at Su Yi doubtfully, but he didn't ask much. He took the order and left. The other representatives of the indigenous races of the Demon Cloud continent were all shocked and couldn't help but show a puzzled expression. Sir Chairman Su Yu, could it be that you have other plans? The native representative men saw some clues, so he asked Su Yi this in a thoughtful manner. Yes, I'm going to negotiate with the goblins. Su Yi nodded. Negotiate. Everyone around showed a shocked expression. Chairman Su, why do you want to negotiate? Although Main Firehammer was a dwarf on the Demon Cloud continent, his temper was similar to the dwarves on the signs. He was also fiery and straightforward. He immediately asked directly, We are fully capable of getting rid of these goblins in one breath. Why do we need to negotiate? Besides, these goblins were never trustworthy. What's there to negotiate with them? That's right, Chairman Su. What's the point of negotiating with the goblins? Virus was puzzled. Even if New Flyer wants to get something from the goblins, as long as you eliminate them, what can't you get? Unfortunately, what I want is them. Su Yi's words suddenly blocked the doubts of the surrounding people. Of course, it's not a problem to kill all the goblins, and it's not too difficult. But have you ever thought about where we are going to find so many people after killing all the goblins? People? The surrounding people looked at each other. Sir Chairman Su, you don't want these goblins to work for New Flyer, do you? Menz asked cautiously. I'm afraid. You all think that the goblins can't be trusted, so you can't use them, right? Su Yi asked with a smile. The indigenous race representatives looked at each other and nodded. In the eyes of the natives of the Demon Cloud continent, the goblins were their greatest enemy that had troubled them for thousands of years. Now that they had the opportunity to eliminate the goblins in one fell swoop, of course they wanted to do it once and for all. As for the goblins not being trustworthy, wasn't that natural? Perhaps that's what you think, and I can understand why you think that way. But in my opinion, it doesn't matter. The goblins can't be trusted? No problem. I didn't say that I wanted to trust them, did I? What I need is only them, not their trust. Our New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce now have a large number of goblin workers under our name. From an objective point of view, if we ignore the low intelligence of the goblins and only use their simple labor, then these goblins are very good workers. The surrounding people had seen the situation that Sue-Yi was talking about over the years, so they were naturally very clear. But, Chairman Su, that's only because there aren't enough goblins at the moment, and they don't dare to cause trouble or resist. If there are more of them, then it's hard to say. Virus still tried his best to convince Sue-Yi. As long as we maintain the absolute suppression of the goblins, then there's no need to worry about this problem. Sue-Yi waved his hand and swept his gaze across the faces of the native race representatives. Or, do any of you plan to privately hand over the military magic machines to the goblins? Everyone hurriedly shook their heads vigorously. Who would be so free as to be courting death and hand over such advanced and powerful military magic machines to the goblins? After all, even the various races that had cooperated with the new flyer for so many years had only received some low-end military magic machines from the new flyer to make it easier for them to fight against the goblins. Lord Chairman Su, there's no need for you to worry. Think about it. Even if someone handed the military magic machines to the goblins, they wouldn't be able to learn how to use them, would they? Men's laughed loudly after saying this. The representatives of the other indigenous races also laughed sarcastically in unison. That's right. The goblins are still eating raw flesh even now. They probably don't even know how to start a fire and cook, Mayan Firehammer added. Everyone's laughter grew louder. The intelligence of the goblins had always been the target of their mockery. It was also an important factor that allowed them to maintain a sense of superiority when facing the goblins. Now that they were collectively mocking the goblins, of course they wouldn't hold back. However, Sue-Yi didn't see it that way. The intelligence of the goblins wasn't high, but something like intelligence could be improved through long-term education. Judging from the goblins' work in the New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce over the years, the goblins still had decent learning abilities. If they were given enough education and training, they would definitely be able to do ordinary work even if they couldn't reach the intelligence level of the other races led by humans. It wouldn't be difficult for them to learn how to use the military magic machines, either. From this perspective, Virus and the others' worries weren't wrong. If the goblins still had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers and still had the military magic machines, then the threat would be too great. However, since Sue-Yi had plans to negotiate with the goblins, he had naturally considered this problem long ago. It was just that it wasn't convenient for him to reveal it now. The other native race representatives chatted and laughed for a while. Seeing that Sue-Yi still had no intention of changing his mind, they could only helplessly give up the idea of continuing to persuade him. They only had the opportunity to defeat the goblins now because of New Flyer. Since New Flyer could easily defeat the enemy that they couldn't defeat for thousands of years, the goblins, it wouldn't be difficult for them to turn the tables and destroy them. Therefore, in front of Sue-Yi, they didn't have any confidence or right to speak. Sue-Yi could do whatever he wanted, and they couldn't really have any ability to oppose him. The natives of the Demon Cloud continent clearly understood this, so they sent Menz, who was the one who fawned over Sue-Yi the most out of all the natives. However, because he and Sue-Yi were both humans, he was naturally closer to Sue-Yi and the New Flyer than the other races. This was the natural advantage of the natives, and the other races couldn't help but be envious. Chapter 1232. After giving up on the idea of dissuading Sue-Yi, Virus quickly turned to a new question. Chairman Su, why do you insist on keeping these goblins as labor? That's right. If you need labor, my tribesmen are much better than the goblins. As Gan Firehammer spoke, he flexed his arms with all his might, showing off his well-developed biceps to the crowd. Whether it's strength or brains, those despicable goblins can't be compared to us. Very simple, there's only one reason. Sue-Yi extended a finger. That is, there are enough goblins. Garn, your people are certainly excellent, but let me ask you, even if all the dwarves on the Magic Cloud continent were gathered, How many would there be? The proud expression on Garn Firehammer's face immediately became unnatural. As a dwarf, he was not good at lying, and even worse at lying in front of so many people. After hesitating for a while, he replied rather dishearteningly, Probably more than 500,000. 500,000? Sui turned to Virus. Virus, how many of your elven race are there? Virus smiled bitterly. Chairman Su, I understand what you mean. If we're talking about population alone, I'm afraid that our races combined are not even 1/10 of the goblins. But the goblins' abilities are not strong, and can even be said to be very weak. Using them as labor, I'm afraid it's not that useful, right? I don't expect them to be useful. Sui shook his head. You all know very well what many of the factories under our Chamber of Commerce do. You should also know that there are many jobs that don't require high intelligence at all, and don't even require high physical strength. These jobs are just some very simple and boring repetitive labor. But no matter how simple it is, someone still needs to do it. If you don't use these goblins, how large of an industrial scale do you think your races can support? The native race representatives looked at each other, their expressions full of helplessness. In the previous Demon Cloud continent, all the other races except the Dragon Clan could only barely survive under the pressure of the goblins. How could they have the ability to support more people? The races present could be regarded as the races with the largest population on the Demon Cloud continent. However, the human race with the largest population was probably only 1 million or so far. Compared to the vast number of goblins, the difference was still too big. Think about it, just for the agricultural magic machine production base, I estimate that we'll need over 100,000 workers. Of these 100,000 workers, more than 80,000 are engaged in the most basic of jobs. The output of this production base was only around 5,000 agricultural magic machines a year a few years ago. But according to our company's current estimates, if we want to open up the farmland on the Demon Cloud continent, we need at least 200,000 agricultural magic machines. In other words, we need more of these production bases. Based on this calculation, how many workers do you think I need to meet the demand? Not to mention that other than the agricultural magic machines, we also need large amounts of other magic machines to improve the environment of the Demon Cloud continent. At the same time, we need large amounts of people in transportation, communication, medicine, management, and other fields. Taking everything together, even if you add up all the people of your races, it's far from enough. After saying this, Sui gave a sigh and shook his head. If possible, of course I don't want to keep the goblins here because there might be hidden dangers. But right now I need these people. For you races with high intelligence, it's easier for you to learn new skills and knowledge, so you need to be used in more important places. Do you understand what I mean? Hearing Sui's final words, the eyes of the native race representatives lit up. Actually, they had been worried for a while because they were worried that if Sui used large amounts of goblins, it would threaten their future development on the Demon Cloud continent. But based on what Sui said just now, Sui didn't plan on using the goblins that much. Rather, he placed more importance on these races. Sir Chairman Su is right. I've been to the signs before, so I'm very clear on the difference between our Demon Cloud continent and the signs. To make up for this difference, we need large amounts of people to develop. It was Menz who was the first to express his opinion. That's right, let the goblins do the simplest work. Our dwarves in the signs are all skilled craftsmen, how can we be worse than them? Gan Firehammer also said. Virus didn't say anything, but he also nodded, expressing his opinion. Seeing that everyone had the same idea, Sui revealed a faint smile. He wasn't worried that anyone would oppose him since the new flyer had absolute power on the Demon Cloud continent, the other races couldn't resist at all. But since he wanted to use the power of these native races, it was better to unify their thoughts. After all, if he wanted to develop the Demon Cloud continent, he couldn't do without the help of these native races. Thinking of this, Sui had a strange feeling in his heart. The situation of the Demon Cloud continent reminded him of the history of the United States on Earth. When the New World was first discovered, a group of Europeans rushed into North America and massacred the indigenous Native Americans. Then, after taking control of the entire North America continent, they captured a large number of black slaves from Africa to work as coolies for themselves, thus establishing the solid foundation of the United States. Compared to the Demon Cloud continent, the Native Americans should be the indigenous races standing beside him. It's just that Sui didn't have the idea of slaughtering them because even if the new flyer could do this, it wouldn't be able to develop the Demon Cloud continent because of its lack of manpower. On the other hand, the goblins should be the black slaves. Although their level of civilization wasn't high, they had the basic ability to work. The goblins were very suitable for the most basic work like the black. And the new flyer could indeed treat the goblins like the American ancestors treated the black. Sui didn't feel guilty about this. After seeing a group of goblins slaughtering a human village and cooking all the humans in it, he didn't treat these goblins as equal intelligent creatures. After a short discussion with the representatives of the native races, Hart returned once again. Hart paused for a moment before adding, "Sir Chairman, we have already surrounded the Gnome Kingdom. I guarantee that not a single gnome will be able to escape. Just now, a group of goblins rushed out and wanted to launch an attack, but I ordered them all to be killed. I don't think this group of goblins wanted to launch an attack, but wanted to escape, right?" Sui glanced at Hart. Hart immediately lowered his head. "President is wise." Sui waved his hand and didn't delve into it. He turned to the other native race representatives and said, "You guys stay here and cooperate with Hart to seal the kingdom. I'll go in and see the so-called Goblin King." Hart and the others were shocked at the same time. "Chairman Su, are you planning to go alone?" "Chairman Su, don't take the risk." "Chairman Su, how can you put yourself in danger with such a precious body? Let us break into the kingdom and capture the Goblin King in front of you. You can interrogate him however you want. No need. The goblins are already scared of us and have long lost the courage to resist. I won't be in any danger. Besides," Sui revealed a confident smile. "Have you forgotten who I am?" Everyone was stunned. They then remembered that Sui had another important identity other than being the former president of the New Flyer, the most powerful mage in signs. Sui didn't care about their reactions. He patted Hart's shoulder and said, "Be careful and be on your guard." His figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. The next moment, Sui had already appeared inside the Goblin Kingdom. This so-called Goblin Kingdom was, in fact, just a slightly larger stronghold of the goblins. There were no neat buildings or gorgeous decorations. The surrounding goblins were scattered around, either sitting or lying down. There was no order to speak of. With a casual twitch of the nose, one could smell all kinds of unpleasant smells that made one want to vomit. Seeing this situation, Sui couldn't help but shake his head. Although the IQ of the goblins had always been low, it was really lamentable that a huge race that could be said to have ruled the Demon Cloud continent for thousands of years had not been able to develop a decent civilization after such a long time. Of course, if the goblins could really develop a certain level of civilization, the new flyer wouldn't be able to open up a situation on the Demon Cloud continent so easily. Seeing Sui suddenly appear, the surrounding goblins were stunned for a moment. After that, they let out unpleasant cries and rushed over. Sui was too lazy to entangle with these goblins. He moved the magic in his body and set up a magic shield around his body, blocking all the goblins that rushed over. Then he slowly flew into the air and launched a sound amplification spell. "Goblin King, come out. I'm the leader of the army outside, the president of the New Flyer, Sui. I request to meet with you and talk face to face." I know you can understand, and you should also know that you have no choice. Sui used the common language of the demon cloud continent. In fact, it was also a language that evolved from the incomplete language of the goblin race. After the sound dispersed, Sui patiently waited for about 10 minutes. A row of goblins that were obviously different from other goblins and even wore a full set of clothes made of unknown materials came from the right front. Where they passed, the other goblins hurriedly made way for them, letting them walk over unimpeded. Suyi's gaze fell on the middle of this special goblin team. There, 4 strong goblins were carrying something like a palanquin. Sitting on it was a somewhat thin goblin, but his appearance and temperament were obviously different from other goblins. You are the Goblin King? Sui stared at him and asked. Chapter 1233. The negotiation with the Gnome King was very easy. The Gnome King's IQ was obviously far higher than ordinary goblins. Even in Suyi's view, he could be regarded as intelligent even among humans. He was very clear about the huge power gap between the goblins and the enemies they were currently facing, so when he learned that Sui came to negotiate, his first reaction was surprise, and then he accepted it very happily. As for the conditions proposed by Sui, he basically did not respond. The only condition he took the initiative to put forward was that he hoped to keep his life and ensure his survival. For this, Sui certainly would not be stingy. He promised to give the Gnome King enough security and a comfortable life that he could never imagine before. As for the entire goblin race, the Gnome King promised to cooperate with Sui and New Flyer to issue orders to the other goblins on the Demon Cloud continent. Of course, the Gnome King also made it clear to Sui that the goblins were never a complete race. His orders would not be obeyed by all the goblins, and it was even difficult to convey it to all the goblins. Sui didn't care about this. Anyway, he just needed a name to keep the goblins alive so that they could stay and work as laborers. With the news that the Gnome King had surrendered, he believed that the other goblins would not be stupid enough to fight New Flyer. This could save a lot of trouble for New Flyer and other races. The surrender of the Gnome King represented the end of the thousands of years of goblin rule in the Demon Cloud continent. But this did not mean that Sui could relax. Accepting the surrender of the Gnome King was only the first step. Next, New Flyer and other indigenous races had to capture and lock up these goblins, and finally train them into qualified ordinary laborers. The work required was complicated, and it was far from being able to be explained in a single sentence. About 4 months later, when Sui was still busy dealing with the goblins and a lot of things in the newly controlled area, a remote communication from the Endless Sea interrupted his work rhythm. 2 days later, Sui appeared on the Sky Island. Sir President, look. Akali, who had been waiting here for a long time, saw Sui and handed him a thick stack of data. Sui took it and skimmed through it. He found that it was a record of the abyssal demon race's ruins that had been found so far. What's going on? Sui asked as he flipped through the pages. These ruins haven't changed in the past few years, but in the past 6 months, there have been some inconspicuous changes. Look at this. Akali flipped a page of the report and pointed at the data on it to Sui. This is the first relic pillar we found. From the data, we can see that the vibration frequency of the magical elements around the relic pillar has increased significantly in the past 6 months. An increase in the vibration frequency of magic elements. Sui frowned. Generally speaking, if such a situation occurred in a mana space, it meant that a magical phenomenon was about to occur. Have you figured out the possible direction of the change? Akali's expression became serious. According to our comprehensive statistical calculation of various data, we can see that the effect of these relic pillars on the surrounding mana space is very similar to the characteristics of spatial teleportation magic. Sui was shocked. Return prophecy? Akali nodded. Yes. If that's the case, it's very mild compared to the rumor that the abyssal demon race will return to this world 10,000 years later. And according to my research on the abyssal demon race's pillars over the years, I can be sure that the ruins arranged within a radius of 300 kilometers are actually a huge teleportation magic array. In other words, these relics of the abyssal demon race began to change according to the time set long ago, and then finally claimed to be a huge teleportation magic array. The abyssal demon race will return according to the legend? Sui blinked with a strange expression. What kind of damned novel setting is this? What did Elder Undine say? Elder Undine, of course, felt that the legend had been verified. Akali shrugged. To be honest, I don't know if she's happy or scared about it. Sui was taken aback. Why do you say that? Ask her yourself. Akali pointed behind Sui. Sui turned around and saw Elder Undine walking over quickly with an excited expression on her face. In Sui's impression, Elder Undine always had a calm appearance. Now that she revealed such a clear look of excitement, it really was surprising. Chairman Su, the abyssal demon race is about to return, Elder Undine said. We'd better make preparations as soon as possible. Otherwise, once they return, I'm afraid all the creatures in this world will be in danger. How can you be so happy when there's danger? Sui looked at her with a baffled expression. He thought that Akali was right. Elder Undine said something very scary, but her expression revealed her happiness. What did she mean? Elder Undine, how much do you know about the legend of the abyssal demon race's return? Sui asked. For example, do they have any plans after returning? In what state will they be in? I don't know. Elder Undine shook her head straightforwardly. The legend of the abyssal demon race was originally something from 10,000 years ago. The elves were able to pass down some fragments, but we know very little about the specific details. So it's like that. Elder Undine, actually, I've always had a question. In the legends of the elves, the abyssal demon race is abnormally powerful, but how powerful are they? Sui asked again. Sorry, I'm not too sure about this. But according to the legends passed down, the power of the abyssal demon race is simply irresistible. Because according to the legends, any ordinary abyssal demon race's power is stronger than the elven archmage's. Akali's eyes suddenly widened. Are you kidding me? Sui glanced at her and shook his head. No, Akali, have you forgotten the research on the nature of magic over the years? I'm afraid that the abyssal demon race's body is not powerful, but they should have mastered extremely profound magic techniques, so everyone can use tools to possess incomparably powerful strength. It's just like how an ordinary person can control military magic machines to display incomparably powerful destructive power. Oh, that's true. If everyone has more power than the archmages, then how could the environment here force them to run to another world? Akali let out a sigh of relief. No, Chairman Su, Akali, you're mistaken. Elder Undine shook her head with a serious expression. When the abyssal demon race left this world, it was actually their own choice. They just wanted to find a new environment. It's not that they can't stay in this world anymore. Sui and Akali looked at each other and exchanged a look of, as expected. Elder Undine definitely knew more about the abyssal demon race, but she was unwilling to say it all. They didn't know what she was thinking. In any case, it seems that the return of the abyssal demon race isn't something to be happy about. Elder Undine, please collect more legends about the abyssal demon race in your elven race so that we can be more prepared. Sui said. Okay. Elder Undine agreed and then said, Chairman Su, how do you plan to deal with these ruins? Will you destroy them for safety? Why did you destroy them? Sui asked back in a surprised voice. These things are important tools for us to study the abyssal demon race, and they also hide the secret of the abyssal demon race's ability to travel to another world. How could I bear to destroy them? Is that so? Elder Undine looked at Sui and saw his expression of certainty. She smiled and said, "Okay, I'll go back to the race tomorrow and check if there is any missing information." "Okay, then I'll have to trouble Elder Undine." After Elder Undine left, Akali suddenly used her magic power to set up a small shield, enveloping Su-Yi and herself. "Elder Undine must be hiding something," Akali said with a sullen face. "Maybe." Su-Yi nodded. "But it doesn't matter." Akali continued to strengthen the observation of the abyssal demon race's ruins. "Also, how long do you need to study this huge magic array?" Akali rolled her eyes at Su-Yi. "If Sir Chairman is willing to stay and help, maybe I can study it in 3 months." Su-Yi pondered for a moment and nodded. "Okay, then I'll stay and help you study it." Akali was just saying it casually, but she didn't expect Su-Yi to agree. She was overjoyed. "That's great. With a powerful archmage like Sir Chairman, I'll have the best experimental material." "Oh no, experimental assistant." "Well, it's obvious that an archmage like you has a much better understanding of teleportation magic than I do. Besides, you're the one who has the best understanding of magic science, with your help." Akali was talking excitedly when her expression suddenly changed and she stopped. Then, she dispersed the magic shield around her and reached into her bosom to take out her exclusive pink magic communicator. "Hello, Cassandra? Where are you playing? Why did you suddenly think of calling me? What are we talking about this time?" Thinking that Cassandra, a dragon, was actually used to talking on the phone with Akali, Su-Yi's expression couldn't help but be a little strange. "Hello, Akali, I have a new discovery. It might be related to the ruins you're studying." Cassandra's voice sounded in the magic communicator, immediately attracting Su-Yi's attention. Seeing that Su-Yi had noticed, Akali raised the volume of the magic communicator so that both of them could hear it clearly. "Where did you find it? What is it?" Akali asked. "I don't know what these things are, but they should be related to those ruins." "Oh right, I'm on the moon now, and I found it here." "On the moon?" Akali and Su-Yi looked at each other and the expressions on their faces were as strange as it could be. Chapter 1234. Unlike Earth, the planet where Signs was located had 2 moons, so 2 moons could often be seen in the night sky at the same time. But what made Su-Yi and Akali surprised wasn't this. Rather it was that Cassandra was actually on the moon. God. Well, there is no God in the sky. Cassandra, you said you are on the moon? Are you talking about the moon? Akali asked loudly in surprise. Seeing Akali's reaction, Su-Yi was sure that it should be the first time Cassandra did such a thing. But compared to Akali, the surprise in his heart was much more exaggerated. He still didn't know how far the 2 satellites of this planet were from here, but the moon on Earth was as far as 300,000 kilometers away from Earth, so even if the 2 satellites were closer, they should still be more than 100,000 kilometers away. Even if Cassandra could fly freely in the sky, how did she get to the moon? Well, it's the moon. Cassandra's voice soon sounded again, and it was unusually clear, as if she wasn't affected by the distance. Su-Yi was a little puzzled. The problem of infinite transmission of magic signals was solved by Akali a few years ago by developing a brand new magic signal wave method, and she had already completed the experiment of communicating with Cassandra in space. But now, Cassandra was at least 100,000 kilometers away from here, and there was still no delay in communication between the 2 sides. In the end, what was the upper limit of magic signal transmission speed? How was the difference compared to the speed of light? How did you get to the moon? Akali continued to ask loudly. Don't tell me you flew there. I flew there. Cassandra's laughter was obviously filled with pride. Did you forget? 2 months ago, I told you that I was going to a faraway place, and I'm afraid I won't be back for a while. Su-Yi looked at Akali, and Akali nodded. That's true. But Cassandra, I never thought that you would actually think of going to the moon. By the way, you said the moon. Is the moon also a ball? Of course. Didn't Chairman Su say that the stars we see in the sky, including the moon, are all balls? Su-yi coughed softly and said, not all celestial bodies are spherical. For example, comets are usually long. On the other side of the magic communicator, Cassandra obviously did not expect Su-yi to be there. After a moment of silence she continued, Chairman Su, you are here too. Yes, I'm here to discuss some things with Akali. Cassandra, let's split up. First, tell me how you flew to the moon. How much time did you spend? That's how it flew all the way to the moon. Cassandra's answer made Su-yi speechless. If it wasn't for the fact that I was too tired for a period of time and fell asleep, causing me to go in the wrong direction, I would have arrived in a month. You only slept once in between and didn't rest at all? Su-yi asked again. We dragons have strong bodies, so it's fine if we don't rest. The main reason I slept was to recover my magic. After all, I can only rely on magic to fly in space. Then how long did you sleep for? It's not clear because there's no concept of day and night in the sky. But based on the amount of magic I recovered, it should be around 3 days. Su-yi silently calculated in his heart. Cassandra had said before that she flew much faster in space than in the atmosphere. Then flying at full speed, she could match the speed of the new flyer's fastest magic airship, which was around 300 kilometers per hour. If she flew at full speed without stopping, she could fly around 7,000 kilometers per day. In 2 months, it would be around 400,000 kilometers. Putting aside the detours Cassandra took, the distance between the moon and the Earth was around the same as the distance between the moon and the Earth. Right, Cassandra, which moon are you on right now? Alice or Tethys? The so-called Alice and Tethys were the names the people of the signs called the 2 moons in the night sky. Most of the time, the bigger one was called Tethys and the smaller one was called Alice. In the legends of the signs, Tethys and Alice were often called the incarnations of sister goddesses. On Alice, Cassandra answered. Cassandra replied, although I can't see a specific example, Tethys should be quite a bit further from here. I'll go explore when I have time. Su-yi couldn't help rolling his eyes. Even in a high-tech society like Earth, it was very hard to land on the moon. Up to now, there was only one record of landing on the moon, and there were many people who doubted it. But here, not only could Cassandra break through the atmosphere with her body, she could even fly to the moon in a single breath. This really made people feel that it was unbelievable. Alright, the second question. You said that you found something related to the Abyss Demon Race ruins on the moon. What is it? Su-yi asked. Hearing this question, Akali also focused. In recent years, she had put a lot of energy into studying the Abyss Demon Race ruins and was very sensitive to this kind of thing. I'm not sure. Akali, do you have a magic illusion projector next to you? Akali was stunned and then asked in surprise, don't tell me you have a magic illusion camera with you. Hee, what do you think? If I don't have a magic illusion projector with me, how can I prove that I've been to the moon? Akali and Su-yi were speechless. So you mean you plan to record the effects for us to see? That's right. Okay, wait a minute. Mr. President, let's go to my lab. There's a high-definition magic illusion projector there. Okay. Su-yi nodded and the 2 figures suddenly disappeared together. They didn't wait to walk over slowly, but directly used teleportation magic to teleport over. A few minutes later, Su-yi and Akali looked at the magic illusion in front of them and nodded. It's definitely the same thing. In the image transmitted back by Cassandra, there was only a stone pillar-like thing inserted into the barren ground. Although it was hundreds of thousands of kilometers away and could only be seen through the magic illusion image, Su-yi and Akali could still see at a glance that this thing was completely the same style as the stone pillars in the endless sea. Cassandra, look around nearby, there should be more than one, Su-yi said through the magic communicator. Okay, I'll try. Wait. Sue suddenly stopped Cassandra. What's wrong? What else do you want me to do? Sue stared at the magic illusion image for a while before suddenly opening his eyes and asking, Cassandra, how did you solve the breathing problem when you were flying in space? Breathing? Cassandra was a little surprised that Sue would ask this question now. It's true that we dragons need to breathe under normal circumstances, but when we can't breathe, we can completely rely on the energy stored in our bodies and the transformation of mana to solve the problem. Why are you asking this? Then try to breathe now. Breathe? Cassandra was obviously a little puzzled. Where is the air in this place? How can I can actually breathe air. How is this possible? Akali had been listening to Suyi's questions with a puzzled look on her face. Now that she heard Cassandra's reaction, she was even more puzzled. Hey, Mr. President, is it strange that there's air on the moon? And Cassandra, why are you so surprised? Sue glanced at her, knowing that it would be difficult to explain to her the principle of the moon being too small and low in mass to retain the atmosphere. He waved his hand and motioned for her to talk about it later. I clearly didn't feel like I entered the atmosphere, so why is there air here? It's strange. I can really breathe freely. Cassandra's voice sounded again. Chairman Sue, how did you know? It's very simple. In the image you took, I saw dust flying around. This is a reflection of the airflow, which proves that there is air there, Sue said. Is that so? Akali doubtfully looked at the illusion. Carefully looking at it twice, she found that there was an irregular pattern of dust flying in the air. Oh, Chairman Sue, you're really sharp. Okay, I'll look again. Maybe there's something similar nearby. Cassandra hung up after saying this. Sue and Akali looked at each other. Akali said, could it be that the abyssal demons went to the moon after leaving here? Sue shrugged. I don't know now. Let's wait until Cassandra finds out enough information. Okay. The two watched the illusion image twice again. Just as they were about to leave, the magic communicator in Akali's hand suddenly rang with a communication request. Cassandra? Akali picked up the communication in confusion, and Cassandra's excited voice immediately came out. Hey, Akali, Chairman Sue, I found something new. There's more than one pillar in this place. There are many more. Wait, the pattern of these pillars seems to be the same as the pattern of the stone pillars in the ruins in the sea. Let me see. Cassandra suddenly screamed, startling Sue and Akali. Cassandra, what's wrong? Akali quickly asked with concern. I don't know what's going on. I just moved a little, and these pillars are now glowing. No. I feel that the surrounding magic space is changing. This is... Cassandra's voice came to an abrupt halt. Chapter 12:35. Akali and Sue were shocked. The two of them stared at each other, their eyes full of worry. Sir President, Cassandra, she isn't in danger, is she? Sue was silent. When it came to the abyssal demon race's stone pillars that they could not fully understand for the time being, even he could not give an explanation. What's more, Cassandra was now on the moon more than 300,000 kilometers away from here. If something really happened to her, there was nothing he could do. Don't worry, Cassandra is a dragon. Her physical strength is so strong that she can even fly freely in space. There shouldn't be a problem. Sue could only reluctantly comfort Akali. Akali was not a young girl, so she naturally did not trust Sue so much, but in the face of this situation, she had no choice but to reluctantly convince herself to believe Sue's words. I hope Cassandra is not. As soon as she spoke, Akali's expression suddenly changed and she raised her head. Sir President, at this time, Sue had already turned his head to the northwest with a look of astonishment. When he heard Akali's shout, he understood that she had also suddenly felt a very strong and abnormal magic fluctuation coming from that direction. Moreover, he and Akali were very familiar with the frequency and attribute of this magic fluctuation. It was exactly the same as the slight magic fluctuation they had felt from the stone pillars in the ruins. Could it be? The two of them looked at each other and nodded in unison. Their figures flashed, and the next moment, they appeared in the sky northwest of the space island. "Sir President, look over there." Akali pointed to the northwest, the sea about dozens of kilometers away from where the two of them were, and exclaimed loudly. In the sea where Akali was pointing, a light blue pillar of light rose from the sea and shot straight into the sky. Looking up along the light pillar, one would find that this light pillar did not dissipate. Even when it was high up in the sky, it did not dim at all. "Chairman Su, what's going on?" The void beside them flashed, and Elder Undine appeared beside Su-Yi and Akali. She looked at the light blue pillar of light in the distance, and asked Su-Yi in surprise. "I don't know yet, but I think we might be one step closer to understanding the secrets of the Abyss Demons," Su-Yi said, shaking his head. Akali didn't care about this. She stared at the beam of light for a while and suddenly asked nervously, "President, do you think this has something to do with Cassandra?" "I'm not sure yet. Let's go over there and take a look. There's still something there." Su-Yi pointed to the northwest and motioned for Akali and Elder Undine to follow. Akali and Undine nodded. Just as the three of them were about to use the teleportation magic to rush over, they suddenly discovered that the surrounding mana space had become somewhat abnormal. With their current powerful abilities, it was actually very difficult for them to perfectly control the mana elements and use the teleportation magic. Su-Yi tried a few times and frowned. "There's no need to try. This mana space seems to have been locked into a special state. Unless we have power that exceeds the limit, we can't use teleportation magic." "Why is it like this?" Elder Undine asked in surprise. "If I'm not wrong, it should be related to the ruins of the Abyss Demons." Su-Yi turned to Akali and said, "Maybe it really has something to do with Cassandra. I hope that after 10,000 years, this huge ultra-long-distance teleportation magic array left behind by the Abyss Demons can still be used normally." After leaving behind these two sentences that made Akali and Elder Undine somewhat puzzled, Su-Yi tried it, and found that although the teleportation magic couldn't be used, the flight magic was still fine. He urged all the mana in his body and flew at full speed to the center of the sea area where the ruins of the Abyss Demons were located. Akali and Elder Undine immediately followed behind. After flying for a while, the three of them found that there were several other blue lights in the sea area ahead. Obviously, the abnormality didn't only occur in the previous place. But just as the three of them were about to fly to the nearest blue light, several blue lights on the sea surface suddenly disappeared together. The three of them stopped in shock. "Mr. President, this..." Su-Yi frowned and thought for a while, and then said to Akali, "Send a message to Cassandra." "Can it get through?" Akali immediately reacted, and hurriedly took out the magic communicator, and dialed Cassandra's communication device. The magic communicator connected immediately, but the sound that represented the communication device rang for a while, and still didn't get through. Just as Akali's gaze gradually turned from disappointment to despair, the magic communicator beeped softly. Akali immediately perked up, and hurriedly shouted into the magic communicator. "Hello? Cassandra? Hello? Can you hear me? Cassandra? Can you hear me? If you can, answer quickly." A moment later, Cassandra's voice finally sounded from the magic communicator. "Hello, is this Akali?" Even through the magic communicator, Su-Yi could easily hear the doubts and confusion in Cassandra's voice. From the looks of it, this extremely daring dragon tribe girl must have suffered quite a shock this time. Hearing Cassandra's voice, Akali immediately became happy. "It's me. Cassandra, how are you now? Did anything happen? What happened just now? By the way, are you now on the moon or?" Elder Undine had a strange expression on her face. Cassandra is on the moon? Where is that? I think I'm back? Cassandra looked very uncertain. Wait, I see the ruined stone pillars. I think I'm really back. Akali immediately looked up at Sui, her face full of shock. Sui had already guessed this possibility. Although he was equally surprised, he still calmly said to Akali, "Let her send a signal and stay where she is. We'll go find her." Akali relayed Sui's instructions to Cassandra, and Cassandra agreed. After a while, Sui turned his head to look to the west, and Akali also looked over. Elder Undine also sensed the special magic fluctuations coming from there, but she was not as familiar with the special magic fluctuations emitted by Cassandra as Sui and Akali were, so her reaction was a little slower. "Let's go and take a look." Sui waved his hand and focused his senses. After confirming that the surrounding magic power space had indeed returned to normal, he directly used teleportation magic to flash over. A few minutes later, Sui had appeared in the sky about 50 kilometers away from his previous position. He looked down and saw Cassandra raising her huge dragon head high. As soon as she saw Sui, Cassandra immediately flew up, transformed into her human form in midair, and then pounced directly at Sui. Sui wanted to dodge, but when he saw a few drops of tears on Cassandra's face in her human form, he couldn't help but be stunned. He couldn't dodge in time and was hugged tightly by Cassandra. "Chairman Su. Were." After calling out, Cassandra hugged Sui and began sobbing. Hearing Cassandra's cries that were exactly the same as those of a human girl, Sui had a strange expression. This was a member of the Dragon Clan, the most powerful dragon among all races, and they can even freely enter and exit space with their bodies. They can even fly directly to the moon. Now, she's actually crying in my arms. After thinking about it, Sui sighed, raised his arm, gently hugged Cassandra, and patted her back to comfort her. After a while, Akali and Elder Undine flashed out of the void. When they saw the scene in front of them, their eyes widened. "This, Sir President, you." Akali pointed at Sui and Cassandra, dumbfounded. For a while, she didn't know what expression to use. However, when Cassandra heard Akali's voice, she raised her head from Sui's arms and glanced at Akali. Then, she directly left Sui's arms and flew toward Akali. It wasn't until she cried in Akali's arms for a while that Cassandra gradually recovered and finally stopped crying. "Ahem. Cassandra, are you okay?" Sui coughed softly and asked. Cassandra looked at Sui, then looked at Akali, and finally glanced at Elder Undine next to her. Her face blushed. Just now, when she was in a state of excitement, she didn't care about anything else. When she saw an acquaintance appear, she threw herself into the other party's arms and cried bitterly without thinking. Now that she thought about it, as a dignified dragon, she actually showed such a weak side in front of two humans and an elf. It was simply too embarrassing. Sui and Akali looked at each other and saw the smile in each other's eyes. In fact, Sui could understand Cassandra's abnormal behavior just now. Although Cassandra was even older than Elder Undine in terms of age, the lifespan of dragons was extremely long, so their mental development was abnormally slow. It was said that dragons had to live for at least 1,000 years before they could be considered adult. So with Cassandra's current age, if converted to human age, she was probably equivalent to a 15 or 16-year-old girl. Moreover, Cassandra spent most of her time living on the island where the red dragons lived. She had little contact with the outside world, and her mind was even more pure. In terms of intelligence, she was probably even lower. Now that she suddenly encountered such a huge change, it was normal for her to lose control of her emotions. In order to prevent Cassandra from continuing to feel awkward, Sui coughed and continued to ask, "Cassandra, you were on the moon just now, right? Then do you know how you came back here?" Cassandra raised her head again and thought for a while, her eyes a little confused. I don't know what's going on. I just found those stone pillars on the moon that were very similar to here, and then tried to input some magic power into them. Then I saw those pillars emit blue light at the same time, and then I felt a particularly strong change in the surrounding magic power space, and then everything went black. When I came back to my senses, I found myself here. Blue light? Su-E and Akali lowered their heads together, understanding in their hearts. It seemed that the things Cassandra found on the moon were indeed related to the Abyss Demon ruins here. Chapter 1236. He did not get any more information from Cassandra. As Cassandra said, she just saw that the pattern of the pillars on the surface of the moon was like a magic array, so she tried to inject some magical elements into the pillars. Then, the pillars inexplicably emitted blue light, and she inexplicably returned. But when she accepted Su-E and Akali's proposal to do the same to the pillars on the Endless Sea, it did not cause any reaction. Whether it was Su-E or Akali, they were both very dissatisfied with this result. The research on the pillars of the Endless Sea had been going on for so long, but there had been no special progress. Now that there was finally a new development, but no substantial effect was found. Of course, that would not do. Su-E really wanted Cassandra to fly to the moon again and try to restart the pillars on the moon. At the same time, he wanted to collect some specific data to help with the research. But when he thought of Cassandra crying in his arms, he couldn't bring himself to say it. However, Cassandra's expedition to the moon brought some very useful information after all. For example, on Alice's moon, there were not only ruins left by the abyssal demons, but also air. Su-E speculated that it was very likely to be one of the satellite bases left behind by the abyssal demons. Moreover, Cassandra had directly teleported back to the surface of this planet from the moon, which proved that the spatial transmission technology mastered by the abyssal demons had reached an extremely amazing level. They could even easily break through the distance of 10,000 kilometers in an instant. In the previous legends about the abyssal demons, it was said that they went to another world. But now, Su-E could be sure that these abyssal demons did not run to a so-called different world, but should have used spatial transmission technology to move to a more distant place on a large scale. It was just that he didn't know to what extent their spatial transmission technology had reached. If they could achieve hyperspace transmission across light years in the true sense, then these abyssal demons might have migrated to other planets as early as 10,000 years ago. Of course, it was also possible that they died during the space migration. But this was no longer important. Judging from the current situation, the legend that the abyssal demons would return to this world after 10,000 years was probably nonsense. When these abyssal demons left this planet, they migrated as a whole, and they probably had no intention of returning at all. The legends passed down by the elves were probably just a misunderstanding by their ancestors. It was impossible for the abyssal demons not to know that 10,000 years was enough for the surface of the planet to undergo tremendous changes. Therefore, they still left this huge magic array, which should be mainly used for spatial teleportation on the endless ocean. Of course, they knew that after 10,000 years, this magic array would have been affected by the automatic geological changes and become unusable. Today, Cassandra was able to inadvertently activate the teleportation magic array on the moon to teleport back. It was already a great accident. So for Su-E, studying these ruins was something he had to do, but he couldn't rush it. He originally wanted to stay on the space island and wait for Cassandra to recover before cooperating with Akali. However, at this time, an unexpected piece of news forced him to stop his plan. Heinz was critically ill. ###, a magic airship landed in a secluded valley on the outskirts of Banta City. When the door opened, Su-E quickly came out. He nodded at Alex, who was already waiting here, and without saying a word, he walked towards a manor in the valley. At the entrance of the manor, there were also several people waiting here. When they saw Sui come over, they all surrounded him. Chairman Sui impatiently waved his hand. Stop talking for now, bring me to see Hines. Everyone could see that he wasn't in a good mood, so they quickly closed their mouths and had Alex lead them into the manor. After passing through a garden that wasn't small and 2 corridors, Sui finally arrived at Hines's bedroom in this manner. When he stepped in, the people in the bedroom all turned to look at him. Sui raised his hand to cut off everyone's greetings and walked to the side of the bed. He looked down at Hines, who was clearly very weak lying on the bed. Seeing Hines's yellow face that didn't have any blood in it, Sui gave a sigh in his heart before calling out in a soft voice. Hines, I'm here. Hines's tightly closed eyes slowly opened, and after looking at Sui for a few seconds, he revealed a very forced smile. Sui, you're here. While saying this, he raised his right hand with difficulty. Sui quickly reached out to take it. He opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. Seeing the expression on Sui's face, Hines gave a forced smile and slowly said, No need to be like this. I've lived for this long, it's about time. Sui gave an unsound before turning to look at the doctor on the side. The doctor saw through Sui's intention and shook his head at him with a serious expression. Sui's face sank. He turned to look in the crowd and saw an elf girl wearing a nurse's uniform on the other side of the bed. He waved at her. The group of people looked at Sui's actions in confusion, not understanding what he wanted to do. The elf girl also walked over with a puzzled expression. Chairman Sui, do you have any orders? Wait a moment. Sui gave an order before turning to look at Hines again. He leaned over and whispered in his ear, Old friend, I'll let you live a healthy life for one last time, are you willing? Only Goddess Rhea, who was closest to the bed, heard Sui's words and looked at him in surprise. Hines smiled again and whispered, I know after this time I'll die, right? Sui nodded lightly. All right. I have a lot to say. This won't do. Seeing that Hines agreed, Sui turned to look at Rhea. Rhea naturally understood what he meant. She looked at Hines on the bed and sighed softly before nodding. Sui stood up again and said to the elf nurse, You should know how to use life commendation, right? Yes. The elf nurse nodded before a shocked expression appeared on her face. Chairman Sui, do you want me to use life commendation on him? His life force is already very weak. If I use life commendation, he might not survive. She looked around at Hines's family and friends and didn't dare to continue. Sui continued for her. I know. If I use life commendation, I don't think Hines will live past tonight. Everyone in the room burst into an uproar upon hearing this. Although Hines looked very weak right now, he had received very good care. It wouldn't be a problem for him to last 10 days or even half a month. However, Sui wanted to use life commendation on him so that he wouldn't survive the night. Of course, Hines's family members were extremely dissatisfied with this. Although everyone recognized Sui at this time, they didn't have any scruples at all. The group of people began to loudly shout at Sui, and there were even some people who began cursing at him. Shut up, all of you! Alex suddenly roared, suppressing all the voices in the room. What are you doing? You're being so disrespectful to Chairman Sui. Are you looking to die? Although Alex was Hines's nephew, he had been brought to the Frestec Chamber of Commerce by Hines since the beginning. He could even be considered a senior member of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, so he had a high status. Later on, he left the New Flyer and opened his own construction magic machine company. With the help of the New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, he was doing very well. Now, he could be considered one of the top companies in the Lampari Kingdom. His status in the family was naturally much higher than his relatives and friends who were just waiting to die. Now that he was so angry, the others were shocked. Alex angrily looked at his relatives and friends, but he was very worried. He naturally understood why his relatives and friends were angry at Su Yi's arrangement. It was because these people all relied on Heinz, or rather, relied on him to obtain their current superior lives. If Heinz died, their lives would definitely be greatly affected. In the future, they would no longer be able to enjoy the various benefits that Heinz brought them. Of course, they hoped that Heinz could live for as long as possible so that they could have more time to make arrangements. But these idiots never thought that even if it was Heinz, he was relying on Chairman Su in front of him to have his current position. If they offended Chairman Su, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Su-yi glanced at Alex and smiled, but didn't say anything. Rhea stood up at this time, looked around and sighed, "We'll do as Chairman Su says." Since Rhea had spoken, Heinz's relatives and friends naturally didn't dare to say anything. The elven caretaker confirmed with Rhea and Heinz again before gritting her teeth and pressing her hand on Heinz's chest. A faint green light came out of her palm and slowly seeped into Heinz's chest. Originally, Heinz was already withered and weak. However, as the green light penetrated deeper into his body, his exposed skin slowly became rosy. Even the wrinkles on his face were smoothed out. After a while, Heinz suddenly opened his eyes and sat up from the bed. His face was flushed and his eyes were full of vigor. He looked full of energy. The elven nurse took her hand back and Heinz gave a laugh. He threw off the blanket and in front of everyone's surprised gazes, he jumped out of bed and hugged Su-yi. "Haha, old friend, let's drink to our heart's content tonight." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.